Okay, so I'm calling this meeting to order at 5:30 PM. First, a reminder that meetings of the Select Board are meetings conducted in public. They are not meetings of the public. Nonetheless, members of the public shall be afforded reasonable opportunities to express opinions about matters conducted by the Select Board so long as order is maintained. The rules for public comment are, at the conclusion of a Select Board discussion on an agenda item, but before any action is taken, there may be 10 minutes afforded to public comment. Comments made by the public must be addressed to the chair, to the Select Board as a whole, and not to any individual members of the Select Board or members of the public. Members of the public must be acknowledged by the chair before speaking. If a member of the public has already spoken on a topic, they shall not be recognized again until others have first been given the opportunity to comment. Order and decorum shall be maintained throughout the meeting. Personal, impertinent, threatening, or profane remarks will not be tolerated. For those who are participating via Zoom, please note the chat is not an appropriate avenue for public comment. All public comments must be made verbally when acknowledged by the chair. Please silence all cell phones, and a reminder to all that this meeting is being recorded and may appear on the internet. So, next thing is adjustments to the agenda. Karen, and I was wondering, because Sue Coakley is here, would it be okay if we moved her into boards, committees, and commissions instead?
Yeah, as long as it's, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I'd like to table, item 8H.
8H.
Capital plan,
Okay,
because it's not available yet.
good reason. Okay.
And I did a little research on the social service appropriations issues, and should we just bring that up when we get down to
Yes.
K?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so, I'll just make a note. Social agency policy. Okay, are there any other adjustments? No? Okay. Moving on to the approval of minutes. Can I hear a motion to approve the minutes of November 16th, 2022?
I'll make a motion to approve minutes, November 16th, 2022.
Did I say the wrong date? I probably did.
No, I was right.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of November 16th, 2022. Did anybody see anything that needed changing? Looks good? No changes? All right, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I'll abstain.
All right, abstain. So 4 to 1 abstention. Next on the agenda is public comments on items not on the agenda. Is there public comment in the room?
One quick one.
Yeah.
Several years ago, the town voted to have a hired town clerk, and the select board at the time hired John Johnson, and he does a superb job. Our office works with him a lot. He cares deeply about the town, about the people, about running the office the way it should be run, and he and his assistant are excellent, and I just wanted to put that out there.
That's good. I'd second that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Is there public comment online on items not on the agenda? Doesn't appear so. Is there any other public comment on items not on the agenda in the room? All right, moving on to warrants to the treasurer.
We don't, we usually have sort of a menu on the side.
Yeah, we do.
And I just,
it is nice to have
make sure
that.
we're not missing somebody.
We don't have a lot of people
People-
on, so I think that's everybody there is. But
There might not be anybody
Yeah.
on the phone, but I just want to make sure we're not missing.
yeah, that's
I
fair.
don't want that.
I can hear you.
Okay.
If you click participants, that'll pop up the.
There it is.
Yeah.
All right, so I didn't,
Thank you.
everybody who's online had a chance to raise their hand, right? Okay, okay, did you want to talk, Sue? No, you're good? Okay. All right, so back to warrants to the treasurer. Can I hear a
I'll make a
motion?
motion to approve and execute the warrants to the treasurer as presented upon completion of review.
Second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve and execute the warrants upon completion of review. Karen?
So payroll warrant dated December 2nd, 2022 in the amount of $17,512.59. A little bit smaller than the
I was
last
gonna say, that's
warrant.
uncharacteristically small. Why,
Yeah.
is there a reason, or,
Probably first responders, not as many.
yeah.
But everybody else is normal.
Okay.
Let me see. And then we have accounts payable dated November 19th through December 2nd, 2022 in the amount of $1,241,879.65. So in this warrant is the second school payment for $1,170,490.74.
That's a chunk of change.
Yeah, the last payables was a large one as well. But it is what it is, and that big payment's gone. So it's like, we don't have another one until February.
Okay.
So-
Independent landscape is,
So
is
that,
all the cleanup out here, is that right, or is that?
no, that
that's
is
okay on
fall cleanup for all the cemeteries, and there was 2 mowings in there
Yeah,
for Mount Pleasant that he didn't bill.
okay.
Karen, what's MVP Healthcare Inc.?
That is our medical insurance. So that is our monthly premium for all the employees who have medical coverage.
And RC Brayshaw?
That is printing of envelopes.
For,
For mailing, so just regular
Regular-
town Putney.
okay.
Yeah,
what is Theater X Productions?
what is that?
Sounds
It's,
interesting.
yeah, it sounds fun.
What is it called again?
Theater X Productions, it's for $350.
I don't know, is that a library thing? Emily, can you help me on that? Theater production, it is a library, it's for,
It's a library thing. I think if it's 350, I think it's Dino Man. You guys are right,
yes.
it was really fun.
yeah,
I saw a lot of Facebook posts on that. That did look like fun. Okay. And then Hannaford's. What's,
Hannaford's is White Whitney, they request that we purchase the gift cards.
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's $2,500 worth of gift cards that they give out around Christmas.
Okay.
So, and then it gets reimbursed through their account.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? All right, hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Can I make one more comment on this warrant?
Yeah,
So there are a few names on here, if you didn't notice.
I didn't.
Those are tax credits, homestead
figured
exemptions,
like state
overpayments.
payments came out, the
Yes.
state payments came in, yeah. Okay. All right, so we have finished that one, so the next piece is the town manager's report.
Small. So I attended the Welcome in and Engaging Communities cohort, was it last week? I chaired the recorded meeting with the chair of the Select Board and Equity and Inclusion. So, lots of good stuff in there. I wasn't up to par, so I just kind of listened, but I'll go back and listen to the recording again. There's a PowerPoint too, so I'm glad that they're recording it so I can share it with other people and get a different perspective. VCRD, Vermont Council Rural Development, Step 2 is December 12th, which is a Monday night at Putney Central School from 6:30 to 9 p.m. BCTV will be recording that session.
Okay.
Not quite sure how that's gonna line up if it's in 2 different rooms, but I'm sure they have that figured out. Local.
Just one second, isn't this one in all together? Like, do you know what the format of this one
I don't.
is going to be?
No.
I kind of assumed it was all going to be in one.
I think you're right, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
There's also the Zoom portion will be interactive with it'll be basically a
Right.
hybrid,
Yeah.
similar to what we're doing now, was my impression.
Right, because we're supposed to be going over the priorities and then
Voting on it.
picking out
Yeah.
for like the top 3, is my understanding. So, we'll see. I hope everybody attends, like as many people as last time. It would be great.
Yeah. See if we can top it.
Yes. Local Solutions for Local Housing Needs is happening tomorrow in Wilmington from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. I will be attending. Michael Maricki and Eileen also are attending. So we'll bring back some good information, hopefully. Local Concerns Sidewalk meeting is December 5th, which is Monday night at 6 o'clock here at Town Hall. So again, this is the V-Trans grant that was awarded to Putney for feasibility study for sidewalk from Putney Landing over to the co-op. So if anyone is interested in sidewalk development, especially for this area, they should attend via Zoom or in person.
And it's specifically only for that section of sidewalk, is that correct?
Yeah.
That is correct.
So it's kind of limited to that piece and not general sidewalk
Conversation.
issues.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just so folks know, so Pip Bannister, he's with the Planning Commission, and myself, we've been going to the meetings, and we have not seen any options yet. So this is going to be our first exposure as well.
Options for location, yeah.
Yeah, for location. Pip and I spoke to the engineer about a sidewalk perhaps going north, as far as the library. Because possibly we can get a crosswalk at that point. But I'm not quite sure what the engineer has for options.
Okay.
And I believe the local concerns meeting too is they're gonna listen to other folks with ideas or concerns and incorporate those as well.
Okay.
So,
Mr. Kremen, do you have a comment?
Yes, Madam Chair. A couple of questions for our town manager. First, I heard that Windham and Windsor Housing Trust might have some money available to contribute to this project. Would you happen to know anything about that?
I know a little bit about it, and it's another conversation we're gonna have with them. And when I say we, it's Pip Bannister and I. But that has been brought up, Mr. Fairman.
Thank you. And my second question, first I think I'll frame this a little bit. You mentioned the possible northerly end of the sidewalk. The southerly end is planned to connect to the Putney Landing property at its corner that's closest to Curtis Barbecue and Putney Landing Road. In other words, come down the bank there, then extend somewhere and presumably have a crosswalk, because the whole idea is to make it possible for people to get over to the co-op safely.
That is correct.
So, yes. So I'm wondering, are you expecting that there will be a site visit for this, or that they will come with some pictures or plans or something showing just what they have in mind?
I don't expect a site visit. We have already done that, so I do expect that they're gonna have pictures and hopefully some sort of a site plan, you know, for the sidewalk.
At the meeting coming
At
up.
the meeting, yes. They will share what they have.
I just realized I have a third brief question. You meant the crosswalk, of course, because Route 5, Main Street stroke Route 5 is a state highway. There's not going to be any sidewalk unless the Vermont Agency of Transportation authorizes it. Do you know if they have been approached about this?
They were at the initial site visit, so they are aware of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I would hope that any feasibility study would have the state,
Address that.
yeah, in mind when they come up with their plans.
Question, then that northern part where we've been talking about before from, you know, from up to the library, up to the bank. I thought that was part of the feasibility study, but it's not?
It wasn't initially
Uh-huh.
until we discussed it at the meeting, at the site visit. And we walked it, actually.
Uh-huh.
And then we walked Old Depot Road as well.
Okay.
So, because as we all know, that intersection right there by Curtis's, it's difficult,
Right.
you know? So, trying to get people to cross there safely is a concern. So, hopefully the engineer has come up with some creative ideas.
Okay, and the meeting is Monday at 6, did you say?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I mean, no matter what creative ideas to put a crosswalk north, it's not gonna stop people from crossing down by the
That's-
co-op.
that's
You know, they're gonna
correct.
do that
That's
anyways.
correct.
So I hope it would be two different crosswalks, but I will come to the meeting and find out.
Okay, sounds good.
I would tend to agree with you, other than people who were headed somewhere other than the co-op.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're headed to
Right.
anywhere in the village
Yes.
or to the
Yes.
library,
Yeah.
then logically you
Yes.
go up and cross. But I think you're right,
Yeah.
that hopefully,
Right.
and I think that the state might complicate that, because having two crosswalks might not be something there that's
Yeah.
really good. But
And they might be more amenable to having one next to the bank rather than right on the intersection,
Right.
because that intersection is pretty problematic.
yeah,
Um,
I mean, it would have to be north of Rods, really, in
I
order to
would think
be
so, yeah.
Yeah.
functional.
Past the
and-
stop sign,
Yeah, quite a ways out, so.
yeah, so why not extend it all the way to the bank? Hit more points that way
Yeah,
too.
because if it's north of Rods, they're still gonna cross.
Yeah.
And
But-
down where they're
Maybe, yeah.
crossing now, it's just.
Human
be
nature,
that way.
yeah.
So,
All right, well, I'm not sure that I can make the Monday meeting, but
I didn't look at my calendar, but I hope to
if
make
somebody,
it.
if somebody on the select board could make it, we
Yeah.
could have a report back too. And Karen's gonna be there as well, so.
Yeah.
Mr.
It's a combined meeting, planning commission, select board.
And that-
Oh, okay,
That's here.
Yes.
okay. Mr. Fairman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Perhaps I should mention, being a Putney Landing resident, that there is actually an alternative route, which is the one I employ as at least feeling safest, and that is at the lower, where our driveway meets Putney Landing Road. I walk straight across there and walk up the shoulder, so that, which could be a sidewalk, and then cross the intersection just south of the intersection. And all I can say is I've tried various ways, and this one feels the safest to me. I'm not saying let's not build a sidewalk, but I'm saying if there are problems with putting in a crosswalk further up, it might be possible to put it a bit south of the intersection instead of north of the intersection. That's why I mentioned the point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That was part of an initial discussion as well, Mr. Fairman, so
Right.
hopefully it would be on their
Might be,
radar.
yeah. All right, is there any more public comment on the sidewalk before Karen goes on? Okay. I think you're good, yeah.
So property taxes, I just wanted to inform the board that at this moment for 2022, we have not collected $209,671.47. And for 2021, we're still trying to collect $78,315.43.
Okay.
So just,
Are those
That's a
numbers relatively high?
significant jump.
Okay.
yeah, normally we like to be around 100,000.
Total?
Well, for 22,
Okay.
right about now.
Okay.
So,
A reminder to people too, if you don't make your third payment in a timely fashion, the penalty is very significant. So,
it's 8%.
the day after it's due.
That's correct. And if, I don't really want to bring this up right now, but I'll be looking at tax sale, most likely. The unfortunate thing about not collecting property taxes is that we cannot cover our operating expenses. And that becomes a problem. I'm always willing to work with people to get a payment arrangement in writing, and as long as you stick to it, you're fine. But when we get into the budgets, this money is critical for our business.
Has anybody come forward, talk about the delinquency, if they have, or they just didn't pay?
No, so a couple of people have. So 2022 technically is not delinquent until after February.
Right.
So I'm kind of, lenient about, when it comes in, but I'm watching it, I'm monitoring it, not daily, but at least monthly to see where we're at.
And
People will start to come in, because when I start sending my letters out and asking people to come see me, set up a payment arrangement or otherwise, you're gonna go to tax sale. And what happens is when people go to tax sale, when it goes to the attorney's office, they have to pay more money, but then they pay. And it's unfortunate that they have to absorb that extra legal cost, but, the town can't take that. So I'm being proactive now, because I am a bit concerned.
And again, I would just encourage people to be proactive also, because once you start getting behind,
So our
catch up.
delinquent tax policy states that if you're 1 year in arrears, you can go to tax sale. I have not been doing that because of COVID. I've been allowing people to go 2 years. But if they can get, their past delinquency caught up, I feel better, hopefully they feel better, and then we start a new year. But, I'm calculating, payments that they can be paid before February, They gotta get that second year paid.
Big chunk, yeah.
Yeah,
And it has been our practice, although our policy states we can do
Right.
tax sale after a year.
yes.
Our practice has been to go to 2 years for any tax. I don't recall us ever doing a tax sale after a single year, but.
No, I have never
do
done
we
that
have-
since
I don't-
I've been here.
I don't think I'm aware of us having
And
done that.
I've done 2, maybe 1 tax sale. The other thing too is, what was I just gonna say? I lost my train of thought. Oh, it's gone. Sorry.
It'll
I
come
don't
back
like when
there.
that happens. It's like, whoop, all right, never mind. So is that it for me? Oh yeah, that's it. That's kind of my spiel. When we get into the budgets, you'll see what I'm relating to, okay?
Okay, all right. So is there any public comment online about the town manager's report? Any public comment in the room? All right, moving on to boards, committees, and commissions. We've moved up the appointment of Susan Coakley to the Planning Commission per recommendation of the Planning Commission. And Sue is here. We have Sue's letter of interest. Should I read it? It's
Me too. Me too.
Sure, why don't
Those two.
you, here, I picked it out.
Dear Select Board Chair Chu, I am interested in serving as a member of the Putney Planning Commission and request Select Board approval to serve an initial 3-year term to begin on or before December 1st, 2022. I believe that my past and current activities as a member of the Putney community, as well as my professional experience in working for state agencies and nonprofits in the Northeast region, has given me relevant skills, knowledge, and experience that will enable me to help the town of Putney to effectively engage the community to update and implement the town plan to meet identified needs and priorities. In summary, after graduating from Windham College in 1978 with a BA in Environmental Science and later from Antioch, New England Graduate School with an MA in Resource Management and Administration, I worked 5 years for the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities to develop and implement among the most innovative and robust public policy frameworks in the nation to advance energy efficiency to provide clean, reliable, and affordable energy at scale. I left the Mass DPU in 1989 to lead collaborative efforts to establish similar policies and programs in other Northeast states. In 1995, I founded and served as executive director for the first in the nation regional energy efficiency organization, Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships. I successfully led this 501c3 nonprofit for 25 years to bring together federal, state, and local government agencies, gas and electric utilities, the energy efficiency industry, and environmental and consumer advocates to advance energy efficiency as a top energy policy priority across the Northeast. This yielded tremendous results and success, e.g. 7 Northeast states have been among the top 10 states recognized nationally for energy efficiency policy and program impact, saving consumers billions in energy savings. Similar regional organizations now serve 5 other regions across the U.S. I also served for 27 years on the board of directors of the Vermont Energy Investment Corp, a 501c3 nonprofit that is home to Efficiency Vermont, the first in the nation statewide energy efficiency utility. Notably, my work in public service began with a term on the Putney Planning Commission in 1980 as one of the youngest and, to my knowledge, among the first female members of the Planning Commission. My term coincided with the Federal Bureau of Prisons' proposal to establish a minimum security prison on the then vacant Windham College campus. The Commission's community engagement to vet that proposal led to a townwide vote that ended the proposal with more than 70% of the town voting no. Shortly thereafter, several community members catalyzed an effort to reuse some of the vacant buildings for public purpose and the eventual purchase of the campus by Landmark College. More recently, since my return in July to live in Putney as a full-time resident, I've attended and contributed to monthly Planning Commission meetings as an interested member of the public. I also served on the steering committee of the Our Future Putney initiative that helped create the tremendously successful community forum on 11/14/22 at the Putney Central School. The town of Putney is at an important moment in its history to address urgent needs to revitalize the local economy, increase the availability of quality, affordable housing for all ages, steward the abundant natural resources in Putney for climate resiliency, and strengthen Putney as a welcoming and inclusive community that serves the needs of a diverse population. Having recently moved back to Putney after a long hiatus, I look forward to once again serving the Putney community as a member of the Planning Commission to address current needs. Let me know if you have any questions. Sincerely yours, Susan Coakley.
All right. And I don't know that we have Pip's recommendation, but he did come on, I think it was last meeting, and wholeheartedly recommended this appointment. So
I'll make a motion that we accept the recommendation of the Planning Commission to appoint Sue Coakley as a new member of that commission.
Second.
all right. It's been moved and seconded to appoint Sue Coakley to as a member of the Planning Commission. Sue, do you want to say anything before we volunteer you?
No, thank you for the opportunity, Chairman Shute. I'm just happy to have the opportunity to offer my time to serve the town and would welcome the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay. Is there members of the public online who would like to speak on this topic? Anybody in the room? Any further discussion among the board?
No, just yay.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
Yes,
is
thank
yay.
you very much for putting your name in the hat. We definitely need this type of, we need people, but we need this type of experience for sure. So I'm very glad that you've decided to come on board. All right, so hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, welcome aboard.
Thank you, Sue.
Yay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so the next thing is the select board.
Emily's hand's up. Oh,
items.
Emily, no, it's not her hand, it's
Oh, is it? Emily
celebration.
is celebrating.
Sorry, I was just emoting about congratulations.
So the next thing on the list is the select board items new business, and first on that list is the recommendation of KRT appraisal for 2024 townwide reappraisal, which is the listers, which is Jordy.
So the appraisal committee sent out invitations to many qualified appraisal firms. Ended up speaking with 3 that we sent out RFPs, received 2 proposals, and after examining them, our recommendation is that we go with KRT Appraisals of Haverhill, Mass. Their proposal was had a lot more in it than the other one we received, and also I think they're approved by the state, but they haven't done any work in Vermont yet. So I think their price perhaps is lower than it might have been. And I also think that if we're first, they will want to do an excellent job because we will be their reference. So I think it's a good position to be in. They are willing to do, for the price they offered, everything we asked for in our RFP. So we felt pretty good with them.
And we should mention that along with that proposal, Putney will be switching from Microsoft, which is NIMRIC's current product, to a product called Patriot for their mass appraisal system.
And the other piece is that they will be done by July 1 of 2024, and the other firm is either 2026 or 27.
I think it was
27.
Oh, wow.
Was it 20?
Which is a significant difference.
Brattleboro ended up with 27.
And they would be starting 90 days for the contract. So.
And can you tell those of us who aren't so familiar with this, what the scope of what they're doing is? What the scope of what they're doing is?
Okay, so townwide reappraisal, they will look at every property in town and assess it, appraise it, and bring it up to April 1 of 2024. It will be at fair market value.
The whole town?
The whole town, all the land-only parcels, every house, every shed, every barn. It's a big job.
Mm-hmm.
There are 1,054 parcels, and if we add inactive ones, there's that are in our system that we might like them to do, or at like 1,180 or something. So we had sent them around 1,100, and that's the bid they made.
And that, sorry, our last townwide reappraisal, as you may remember, was 2014. So this will be a 10-year cycle, which is appropriate.
And we will be mandated.
That's what I was going to.
Most
at
likely,
the end of
right?
December,
Yeah.
definitely,
Okay.
on our COD. And
On the
we are a
COD?
little bit ahead of all the towns that are waiting,
Good.
so that's also,
And there's going to be huge numbers mandated because of the change in real estate prices, so
Yeah.
it's good that we're ahead of that.
So for those that are curious, the state doesn't mandate, they mandate via the COD and the CLA, not, no matter, not on how many years you've had, since had an appraisal. So, along with Putney, Brattleboro has gotten away with a 2010 appraisal for the past now 12 years. And obviously just these last few years, things have started getting pretty wonky. So we were up at, I don't know what we were, before we were at, 98 as a CLA, and now we're anticipating to be below 85. So,
In Putney.
in Putney.
Right, yeah.
It's mandated at 88, is that correct?
it's mandated at 85.
85, and this, or
There's-
COD would be 20, I think it's 20.
CMD would be 20,
Yeah.
and I think our COD is probably further out of whack than our CLA.
Really?
Um,
Okay.
Judging by what our advisor said.
Has been
And
saying.
he's not allowed to tell us exactly anything,
Right.
but
He's been
It sure
dropping,
sound- it
he's
sure
been
sounded
dropping hints,
yeah,
yes.
and the CLA, he did allow us, the CLA was gonna put us over anyway, so.
Jordy, if this is upon approval, how soon will the contract be signed?
They will work with Karen, I think, to get the contract the way it needs to be, and then as soon as possible, to let them get started.
So can I make a comment or two?
Mhm.
So KRT is gonna do all of the work, where the other firm is gonna have us doing some of it. So I think that's a plus. Right now in our reappraisal special fund, we have $80,399. We usually receive a little less than $10,000 a year from the state. So if this is going to be done in 2024 at the tune of $115,000, we are going to have to come up with funding from somewhere. My first thought is ARPA, because this is COVID related, and it's pushing us to a townwide reappraisal. So that is an option. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to budget some money in the '24 budget to cover the cost.
But we receive that money every year regardless of whether we're doing a
Yes.
townwide reappraisal or not, so it
Yeah.
accumulates.
But it's
So-
been going down. We've been receiving less, because like 4 years ago, we were getting over $10,000, and now we're barely getting 10,000.
Is that related to the CLA or COD, or why is that we get less?
Yeah,
Per
it's
parcel.
related to the number of parcels, so the more
Oh,
people that buy abutting parcels, the state calls contiguous land a parcel.
That
So
drops our number.
Yeah.
every time somebody buys the property next door, we have one less parcel. And I would have to look back and see, but that, I'm not sure what they count as parcels if the town owned. I'm not quite sure where
Or whether they,
their number
yeah, I don't know if
comes
they count.
from. There's different ways of counting.
Slightly tangential question, but just wondering, and this would be anecdotal on your part. We talked a few years ago about the reality that we were seeing, what we all at that point were talking about as a COVID bump, and how that was going to affect the CLA, et cetera. Is it your sense that that trend peaked and is dropping, or are we, did it plateau?
The rapidity of properties changing hands has definitely slowed, but many of our recent sales have been for double their value, and we hadn't seen that before. So, or double their assessed value.
there's still not a lot of inventory in Putney,
No.
so it's just
There-
a,
more than one, which was for a while we had one property for sale.
Yeah.
And now there's a few, but,
Yeah.
you know, they don't stay long and they're selling for a lot more.
For real money. So that bump was not a,
Yeah.
I mean, it may trend back down over time,
it may
but,
settle out,
but it
yeah.
may not,
The-
yeah.
The conventional wisdom is that it'll
It'll
decline, but
plateau.
not a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that what, Brad, what you think?
Yeah, it's just, yeah, and, you know, Brattleboro's silver lining to having ours done in 2027 is that we will see
Get through
whether there's actually a decline. We'll settle out by the time we're
Right.
doing ours. So, but I think it's good that Putney got in under the wire, and it's got to be done sometime. Might as well be now.
One more question. I know that the last time around, Jordy, and I can't remember, I don't think you were on the listers at that point.
Nobody in the town hall, nobody
Was,
working in the town hall was working here in 2014.
my recollection is that the listers worked pretty significantly with the appraisers through the grievance process. Would that be your intention? Because during a townwide reappraisal, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the appraisers who would be doing that will field and or work with the listers to field grievances before or during that time period before it's completely settled.
Yes, the grievance is a lister process, but they will, the
Assess.
people who are out in the field will actually be managing the discussions and so forth.
I don't
With
remember.
our
Is that-
input, but
Is that included in the price?
right through BCA.
Good.
Perfect.
All
Thank you.
And their price after, for any state stuff is less, their per hour is less than the other one.
Public comment online, Mr. Fairman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two brief questions. First one is, it has been mentioned that this firm, quote, haven't done any work in Vermont yet, unquote. Does this mean that they may be on a learning curve at our expense?
Dave, want to answer that?
Yeah, go ahead.
They have been one of the not very many appraisal firms approved by the state, so one would hope that the state had done their due diligence and has required them to know what they need to know. And in talking to them, it seems like they have a good handle on what they need to know.
And they have significant previous experience
In
in
national-
neighboring states, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, although granted, New Hampshire is definitely not Vermont, but they've definitely done some communities over there and some similar sized communities as well, which is one of the things that we have been, one of the things that we looked at to make sure that they would be a good fit.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Fairman.
Thank you all for your excellent clarifications. This is just in the line of a point of information in case the gentleman from the listers happens to know. Current sales in Putney, do you have any idea of the breakdown versus residential sales for occupancy versus for rental?
We have no way of tracking that in the information that we get. There is a box they check for rental, second home, or primary residence, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's where it's going. We don't really know.
Yeah.
And in addition to that question, does that make a difference for us in our appraisal process? I know it, you know, resident, non-resident as far as the tax let, but in the appraisal process.
It makes no difference.
Right.
It's a resident or residence or an outbuilding or apartments.
Right.
Or a commercial. So various categories.
Is there any other public comment online about the reappraisal proposal by KRT? Is there any public comment in the room? Have we made a motion on this yet?
I'll make a motion to accept the recommendation of KRT Appraisal to complete a 2024 townwide reappraisal for us.
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded to accept the recommendation for KRT appraisal for 2024 townwide reappraisal. Is there further discussion on the board? Is there further comment online? Any comment in the room? Jordy, do you have anything else to add?
I think we've covered.
Okay. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? All right, let's do a reappraisal.
Okay, thank you. Karen, I will talk to you over the next steps.
Okay.
Thanks, Jordy.
Thanks,
Oh,
Jordy.
actually, I'm not here
You're
tomorrow.
not here tomorrow.
No, I'm in Wilmington.
We're going to
Send an
Wilmington.
email to,
Yes.
and should I send one to Ed, Limerick too, or hold off on that one? Send it here.
Yeah, made a
Okay.
decision.
I want you to trip.
Thank you.
Famous Selectboard, all right.
Have a good night.
Okay, so the next thing is the Windham County Sheriff's Office proposed 2024 contract, which has Sheriff Anderson's name on it. Is he attending today?
There he is right there.
Sorry for
You know what? Jordy was right there and all of a sudden you're...
He's also, you gotta change of looks.
I do.
That didn't help either. Okay, hi.
Good evening. So I'll start off with the beard.
Okay.
It's probably the most shocking appearance you've seen of me yet. And what it is, it's a result of is we did a fundraiser to raise funds for the Safe Place Child Advocacy Center down in Brattleboro. They're a nonprofit that helps support law enforcement, the state's attorney's office, in prosecution of child sex crimes, provide services to them. Putney receives services from them. So we're raising funds to help offset the things that the grants that fund their operation don't. We raised, the whole fundraiser raised $6,850, of which our CAC will see roughly a little over half of that. It was a competition between the Windham and Windsor County law enforcement agencies supporting both of our CACs. So next time I see you, I'll probably be shaved. But we did a No Shave November to raise funds for it.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So moving on to the contract. So this year, basically we're proposing the same contract that we've been running for the last few years. There was an increase again.
Sorry, we don't actually have that in
You
front
don't,
of us.
no, you don't.
Okay.
I didn't put it in your packet. If you want to give me a minute, I can get you copies of it.
Yeah, it might be a good idea.
Why? Why is here?
Can I keep talking while she
Yes,
Sure.
just don't start spouting numbers at us until we have them in front of us.
So basically proposing the same arrangement we've been doing with Putney for the last couple of years. I'm not sure where Westminster's at. They, last year, if you recall, we had an agreement with them where they funded 40 hours during the week. The town of Putney funded 40 hours a week. That gave 80 hours of coverage during the week that we would share between the two. And then also on my department to manage underages, overages, and those things. There's some transition in Westminster where I think certain pieces of information weren't communicated through the transition. Long story short, they reduced their contract, and then they didn't understand that it would dissolve that relationship, which then they were confused why their coverage cut in half. So, or more than half, I should say. So, I've since met with their board to have the discussion of why they were seeing a discrepancy from what they expected. I haven't yet met with their board about the budget, so I don't know if that's in the cards yet. I don't know if Putney is still open to that arrangement, but needless to say, what we are proposing is to continue the same plan as we had from last year. There was an increase. I think you probably heard increases from everyone. Healthcare's gone up. Our retirement actually has stayed the same this fiscal year, so that hasn't gone up, but fuel has certainly increased almost over double for us, and that's one of our larger expenses. So broadly, all the expenses we don't really control have increased, and that's the increase represented in the budget. The Any questions on contract? I know you just got it in front of you, so you might want to take a look at it.
So when we contract with you, this is separate from whatever we get assessed by the county, right?
Correct.
So so that assessment is going to include, because I know you purchased the old energy building, and I'm assuming there's maintenance costs and other things associated with just owning that building. But will those be reflected in that budget, or is that reflected in this contract?
So a little unique, but let's talk about it. So the county purchased the new building. It was purchased for about $500,000. The building in Newfane that we had, we were looking at the various upgrades and infrastructure improvements we needed to do. I don't have firm numbers for it, but I'm estimating just based on structural failures of the foundation, needing to address a variety of issues in the building itself, lack of fire suppression, several areas around, I'll just say it simply, my dispatch was in a spot where if there's a fire on the second floor, they wouldn't be able to egress because the historical code, we were told, trumped the fire code, and so all we could do is install a sprinkler system. So, needless to say, they're trapped in the jail, the old jail, if there were a fire, and so we're looking at fire suppression system with COVID, air handling systems, and all these things. We were anticipating being over $1 million just in the upgrades and improvements and the deferred maintenance that the building has undergone over the last 15, 20, 30, 40 years. There's issues with asbestos, issues with mold, issues with lead paint, and so just as you can imagine, all those things come in. The opportunity for the energy building just seemed to be a much more cost-effective solution. So now we talk about a much larger building with the systems that we would have had to install, air handling, elevators, and well, how will that affect the county budget? So what we're actually working to do right now is bring in other tenants to fill out the space. My department doesn't require the full square footage. So we've been working with the state of Vermont to build a program there that would offset the operational costs of the building. So we are negotiating that right now. I'm not going to speak details about it since we are in a contract negotiation, but the goal is for me to use tenancy of the building to offset the operational cost of the building, which ultimately reduces the county tax, while the county still remains responsible for capital improvement costs. So this year in the county budget, we're proposing as if we don't have any tenants, but the anticipation is that we will have tenants within this fiscal year, which then means we are able to reduce spending over the time.
And is it the county's intent to sell your old location?
They are going to, I'm not sure what's public and what's not public. Mm-hmm. They have a plan. There is a use for the building, which I think fits it very well, and I think it'd be appropriate for them to talk about it. But I'll bring that back to them that maybe we should do a press release, or they should do a press release if there's a public plan.
Thank you.
I have a question on the proposed letter. When it says in terms of the rate, $52 per hour for contracts of at least 2,000 hours per annum, what do you mean by contract? Do you mean individual contracts between the Windham County Sheriff's Office and each county? Or each town?
Each town, yeah.
Okay.
So we have two rates. We have we have two rates for towns. We have a prorated rate, which is what the town of Putney receives for law enforcement services because it contracts at 2,000 hours. There's a non-prorated rate, so a higher rate if you go under that. So we service anywhere from 4 hours a week, I take that back, 2 hours a week in a town, which is not very much obviously, up to 40 hours a week right now, which Putney receives. Our model has always been that we contract with the state, we contract with construction companies for like the highway work. You'll see my deputies on the interstate directing traffic. Those are at substantially higher rates, which we use to subsidize the towns in our service. So that's how we buy our cars, that's how we pay for equipment, upgrades, and the various things to continue providing the service to the town at a lower rate.
How do these figures in terms of rates differ from last year, for example?
So there's about a 7% increase for the town of Putney this year, and what that reflects is, it's based on CPI Northeast. So we use that as our assessment of what is the increase of cost of living.
Thank you.
Can I comment?
Mhm.
So I look at the reports every month. So we get the invoice and we get a report of where the deputies, what they're doing, what time they're in Putney. And I track it. I have a spreadsheet and I track the hours. And I also track the money that we get from fines. So Sheriff Anderson's office has been very good, and if they're short on hours, we have the conversation, and either, they'll give us more hours, or in the past, we've gotten credit. So I can say that his department does give us the 40 hours. Sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more, but it does average out at the end of the year.
Do we ever go over the 2,000? Or does it just cut off?
Some months will go over, the 160.
But I mean total, like does it just cut off at 2,000, or has there ever been a time where it was 2010?
So in the last couple of years, we haven't gone over 2,000, and that's
Right.
because the historic, I don't have employees problem, which now I have the opposite problem. I have more people who want to work for me than I have jobs.
That's a good problem to
It's a
have.
good problem.
It's a good problem to have, except for, I won't get into that. It is generally a good problem to have. So to answer your question, at 2,000 hours, we wouldn't just say, hey, we're done.
Right.
We'd have a conversation. And so part of, in the past years when we were short on delivering the service, so we contracted for 2,000 hours and we delivered, making up a number, 1,900. It's then a discussion with the town manager to say, okay, we can roll this into the next contract year. We can, you can choose to, basically we try to find an agreement. Do you want service in a different fiscal period? Do you want a refund? Do you want a hybrid of that? Is there another solution? So to the end of, let's say we did 2,100 hours this year, it would be the same conversation of,
Right.
okay, in the years past that we haven't been able to provide the service, well, you worked with us, we've provided more service because we had more burglaries or whatever the case may be, and so we had these increases. Can we work that out to your next fiscal year so that you don't have to be worrying about how your town budget works? And where do you pull, or I guess where do you rob Peter to pay Paul?
Right.
So we try to be flexible in that regard. Right now we're about 40 hours ahead. I don't know if that jives with your numbers, Karen, but I just looked tonight. We're about 40 hours ahead of where we should be, but that's normal because, we can't really control when call volume increases or decreases. It does, and we respond.
When was the current contract between your department and the town of Putney signed? In other words, where are we in this cycle?
July 1st.
Yeah.
So we run July to June. We're about 5 months into it, actually 5 months after today. We'll start our 6th month tomorrow.
And there is a more, what we have in front of us, Mark, is just your letter
Right.
verifying this year's rate, but there is a more complete contract which Karen has on file.
Yes.
And if you want to see that, this is just the change in rate.
Right,
not
I think
the
we
contract.
actually did vote on that.
We do, yes,
Yes.
we
We
did,
did.
and we do every.
We must have, it must have all
we
been all
do
of us. So.
Previous to July,
Yeah.
to July 1.
Yeah.
Are you feeling like what you're providing us and is it working? We've had this conversation sort of every year of, is this the right amount? Does it make sense? What's your perspective?
So I can now get into my philosophical conversation, which the reformer, if they're watching, they're going to love my answer because I'm going to be equally as vague as the last 4 meetings. I have a plan, and the town manager is one of my top people on my list to invite into that conversation. We've at least talked about it. I haven't released it publicly because I want to bring everyone in at the same time. But long story short, the contracting model from a philosophical level, I don't believe it. It's what we've done for 60 years. So we know it. I can tell you the good parts and the bad parts. You say you want X number of service, and I say I can only deliver Y, or I can deliver Y plus more. And then we are constantly doing this conversation every year saying, well, what's needed, what's not needed, and by the way, let's not break the town's bank. So how do we do it better? My broad level that I'll share today, I think we can regionalize services. Similar to what we're doing with Putney and Westminster, I think we can regionalize services and come up with a model that basically makes it so that you can have access, or your community can have access to our services 24/7 without having to pay the cost of 24/7. I'm looking to pull together a group of towns that are interested in this model come the new year. I'm looking to aim it right in between budgets are turned in and town meeting so that we can start a long-term discussion, but also when we start to see that lull between the two initiatives that take up a lot of the town side. So that's, do you need more? Yes. I think you've heard constituents from the town say they have issues after hours, they have issues at this time. We've had varied hours this year. A benefit of not cooperating with the town of Westminster this year was that we have more flexibility to control the schedule. To say, okay, we're gonna have some late shifts, we're gonna have some morning shifts and move around. The downside again being we're only here for that window of 40 hours a week versus the window of 80 hours where we're still coming into Putney and we're still coming into Westminster. But with that said, we might get called away from Putney just as we get here because there's a domestic in Westminster.
Right.
So I don't see either model being bad, simply of last year versus this year. But I'd like to change the paradigm and move more to regionalized services.
Okay.
Yeah, do you, and maybe this isn't a question that's been answered before, and I'm just not aware of it. What kind of reporting do you do to the town about the services that you provide over the last year, and also kind of a pattern of services? Is there an analysis that's easily accessible to us?
Yes. Did I answer your question? So my department provides what's called the Sheriff's Town Activity Report, or we call it the STARS report. That is the report that the town manager reviews regularly. That also comes as part of our invoicing. And so what that includes will be, it's a public record. It'll include a description broadly of what we were doing. We may have been on patrol, responded to calls for service, arrests, we capture those in there. So that is, I'm going to call that the quick and dirty, watered down report. It gets you information quick. It says, oh, that's why we saw 3 cruisers at the school. It wasn't an incident at the school. They were supporting, I don't know, a Halloween event. So it allows select board members or the town administration to be able to get that information quickly.
And that's it, Karen has that.
It's electronic. It's a website. I have to log into it.
So
But you have, if you want to see it,
Right.
you can, I don't know whether Karen can forward that to you or whether you have to be here to look at it, but you're welcome to look at it.
Right, and as a general member of the public, is that something that's accessible to anybody if they wanted to look at it?
Not really, no. But we get a paper report every month. And it's sort of like what's on STARS. You know, when I go to STARS, I can see it before it comes out on paper. So, but it gives you, you know, the detail, where they were, how many hours, you know, they were patrolling, and, you know, at the very bottom it tells you the hours and, you know, how many fines were issued or how many arrests were made. So it doesn't give you names of people, but it gives you like the incident that they responded to.
But I would assume, Mark, that if one wanted access to that and you were a member of the public, you'd have to do a public records request, but it's public information, so you have access to it, but you'd have to request it specifically.
So to accessibility, it's not easily accessible, but it is public information. So any request we would have to respond to, and we would give it. It's just what we try to do is actually ask the town to determine what level of access they want to make it available. Right. So there's one town that they publish every SCARS report right online. That works for them.
Is there any reason not to do that?
I think that's really a question for your community, if they want that information published.
Yeah.
I could see, if you're publishing like addresses or something like that, that could get pretty personal pretty quickly.
Yeah, so we keep personal information out of it, so that's where I say it's the watered down report.
Right, but if you're doing addresses, if you're doing 911 addresses, then people know where everybody lives, so.
Yeah, so all we give is the street name.
Okay.
We also, speaking of analysis or analytics, we do have, our records management system is able to publish a number of reports. I had intended to bring those to you tonight. I have a black and white printer that I didn't realize was black and white, and so it's a bunch of shades of gray. So I will send over PDFs of our analysis reports, which we can go from types of calls to arrests made, types of traffic violations, locations things are happening, and we do sanitize the location data still, so it's not going to be like, this was at 1 Main Street, it was rather, I hope nobody lives at 1 Main Street, I'm making that one up, but rather it occurred on Main Street. So we do try to generalize streets. We are aware that there's going to be 911 addresses that have 2 houses on the street. And so where we are aware, we do try to say this was in the area of, if we can. So we are sensitive to release of private information.
I have public comment online, Mr. Fairman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have 4 points. I'll be brief. First one is my recent experience with the animal control officer was excellent. Second, just a clarification regarding public records. The Vermont Public Records Act is state law. Therefore, no select board or any other lower level public body could possibly make a decision about what is a public record and what is not a public record. Third, a question for the sheriff. Which days of the week are you proposing to provide coverage in Putney?
So generally our contract, I'm not going to read it verbatim because I don't have it in front of me. Our contract reads something to the effect that we'll have a discussion with the town or their designee to determine that. We generally don't try to make it public unless we've been asked to make it public because it comes back to one of the exemptions under the public records law about crime fighting techniques and ways to work around that. But we do involve the town in our discussion, and then we work around that, but we do maintain control and responsibility for setting the schedule. Not so that I can work through personnel issues if I have someone call out sick, but I have another person who can come in 3 hours after. We'll do things like that.
Thank you, Sheriff. So then just to ask a more precise question, is weekend coverage a possibility?
I think we currently provide some, but I'd have to verify that. I don't know. Is it a possibility? Anything's a possibility. I mean, it's all part of the discussion. So that's usually a discussion that we engage with the town manager or the select board, depending on who wants to have the discussion. We take your thoughts under advisement to help develop that, and that's part of why we've had shift coverage that is both daytime and nighttime. And I'd have to get back to you on whether or not we are currently providing weekend coverage or not. I just don't know the answer.
Okay.
I don't know it.
Thank you.
In my head either.
Go ahead.
Thank you. My final point is, I believe I observed that you are members of the members of our town of Putney Select Board receives this document for the first time during this meeting. Am I correct?
Was it in our packet, our electronic packet?
No, it was not.
So yeah, I guess that's true.
Okay, then my question to you is, will you be making any decision this evening?
I don't believe so.
No.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, Mark, as you know, over the long haul, there's been lots of discussion about community policing and what that means. Just a brief comment of, well, two things for me, sort of where you feel you're at with that, and also, you know, one of the things that's been challenging for that over time has been your ability to fully staff yourself, and is your staffing situation going to improve your ability to have community policing in the way you envision it?
Sure, so basic philosophy of community policing, the police are the community are the police. And what I mean by that is that I have deputies who are part of this community, and they have a professional job, they are trained to do certain things, they are empowered to do certain things. But we can't do it by ourselves, we have to work with the community. So we need information from the community, we need partnerships, we need engagement, and so broad philosophy, that's one of the things that we work to target. Mr. Fairman mentioned our animal control officer program. I haven't talked about that. It is a separate contract, but it is an example of community policing where, I mean, primarily what we want to get is voluntary compliance on anything. It's far better for everyone. It's cheaper, it's better, it makes more sense, and at the end of the day, it rubs less feathers. So voluntary compliance is one of the things through the animal control officer program that we've been able to see a lot of benefit in. Hey, this is against the law, this is the law, let us educate you about it. It's not because we need to come in with a hammer, it's because we want to help you join society in compliance. It's lofty. And so communicating the broad level is easy, but working on developing that over time, it's really about developing the culture of my department and being able to ensure that we're seeing that. One of the things I'll talk about, Karen mentioned revenue from traffic tickets. One of the things we've noticed is that we've seen where we used to have about half of our violations were tickets, half of them were warnings, which is usually there's not a guideline anywhere, but it's generally considered a welcome median. We've seen warnings increase significantly and fines decrease significantly. And so the question becomes why? Last 2 to 3 years, we've been talking about fair and impartial policing. We've been talking about the impacts of minor equipment violations on people of lower means. And so as we're having these discussions, we're seeing some of the effects of those discussions and the impacts that they may have. But we're also noticing an increase in significant violations, motor vehicle violations. The arrests in Putney that we've had since July 1st, excessive speed, negligent operation. I think there's one DUI, an arrest warrant, simple assault, and a domestic assault. It's like, most of them are traffic related. So one of the initiatives that we're going to be, I'm looking to engage with my staff come the new year, is to sit down and say, what is our traffic safety plan? Because we are seeing this across the county. Our most consistent conversation with towns thus far has been, we are seeing increases in speed, we're seeing increases in reckless driving, and just crazy issues with driving. This year our traffic stops are up higher than they were the last 2 years. But we're not using enforcement as much because, again, that concept of voluntary compliance is better. But similar to your conversation on tax sales. Well, 2 years, I mean, we want, the town of Putney wanted to have some leniency to understand people have circumstances. My deputies want to have leniency to understand circumstances, but there has to come a point where we just start saying no. So it's a dance. It's a delicate dance at times, but I think our pendulum has swung a little bit too far over, and we need to start bringing it back to corrective action. I don't know if I answered your question, but I rambled some.
It's helpful. I mean, do you have a sense that Again, as far as staffing is concerned, that's going to give you some greater stability in who's covering what territories at what, if for longer. You know, we had significant turnover in our deputies who were covering Putney for a long time, and I know there's some stability in that, but I'm just your perspective on whether that's less of an issue than it was or not.
So we've had the conversation, not just with Putney, but with other towns about turnover when they have a person for 40 hours a week. I don't have the exact answer. I can make some assumptions, but there's a stress to the deputy when we talk about contracts and, hey, we're at 40 hours, now we went down to 30 hours, and there can be some introspection involved. Was that my fault? And was that the sheriff's fault? Was that someone else's fault? Why did the town feel this way? Did they just not support us? We've seen communities in Vermont, I'm not going to name any, but communities in Vermont who have taken drastic cuts against their law enforcement agencies only to find out that they now just can't hire. The money's good, the benefits are good, and no one wants to work there just because it's there's a psychological issue of, are we going to be supported? There's a lot of different ways that we can work through those issues, and so that's where, I mean, I've always appreciated the dialogue I've had with the town manager, but also with the select board, because we always get quick feedback of these are the issues and these are ways we can correct, and that's why I think we've had my office and the town have had stability, but in terms of measuring by the person, we haven't. But this is also where I go to the fundamental issue of, I think we can do it better and create a system that allows for more stability within the overall philosophical model of how we deliver services.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's public comment online. That's Janice.
Hi, thanks. I hope this isn't germane to the discussion. It's really an observation. You know, from the postcard surveys and also feedback at the forum the other night, there is a segment of the population that states that they're concerned about safety in the community, and this is, some of it's, you know, speed bumps and sidewalks, but some of it is looking for a larger police presence. I don't know what it's behind this. It might be useful for the select board or the community to figure out what's driving this concern in light of wanting more information to help make the best use of the sheriff.
Thank you. We did have a community safety meeting last summer, not this summer, the summer prior, where the community was invited to attend and express their concerns. Possibly it's time to do that again, I don't know.
I think one of the things, Janice, I can't remember whether you were present at that meeting or not, but you know, the desire to have 24/7 coverage, I think we would all love to have that. Yeah. But when you do the simple math related to it, to what Sheriff Anderson has to charge in order to provide that, it just staggeringly changes the equation for us. And you know, particularly in times where we're looking at significant inflation pressure, et cetera, you know, that's a tricky balance. And I think we'd all love to see more coverage, but it's just expensive. And note that I'm not saying that as a jab against the sheriff's office, it's just a reality.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't lobbying for it. I was just raising it as an observation from these the feedback we've received recently.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Is there more public comment online about the sheriff's proposed contract? Is there more discussion on the board? Any discussion in the room?
Can I just make one final comment? So last year we came in talking about how we had significant increases in our retirement. I forget if I've been back to the board since that conversation, so I just want to give a bit of an update. We worked with, in addition, many heroes in the legislature in this conversation, but certainly I'll say that Jeanette and Mike Murky, they both were immense help in our work on a retirement bill. We were able to get a retirement bill passed. It wasn't the bill that we wanted, but it's a step in the right direction. So it's our intent to return to the legislature this year to continue to work on it and hopefully bring it to a close so that we can actually have a decrease in our current rate. So just wanted to give you that update. No promises because it's at the will of the legislature, but we will be working hard on it.
Okay, thank you. So contact your legislature. All right, is there any other discussion or questions? All right, then, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do you want me to talk about animal control?
Maybe at a separate meeting we can talk about that. Yeah.
I know you have a lot.
Yeah.
I just want to be clear, it's separate from this contract.
Right.
Okay, yes, I think we knew that. We knew that. I don't know if the public knew that.
One word answer, it's going pretty well.
I think it's going awesome.
It
Great.
is,
Good.
yes.
Good.
Great.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next is the library proposed 2024 budget. Emily, you're up.
Hey folks, great. Thanks. I don't think that I am able to share my screen, but if whoever's driving the town of Putney account can make me a co-host, I will be able to share my screen.
Let me see if I can do that.
I believe in you. If you go to
Yeah,
participants and see the whole list of us, oh, you did it. Great.
Yay!
Thanks. Great. Great. So I will just pop up my spreadsheet here.
Do you have a copy of that?
Thanks.
You're all set?
You guys have paper copies as well?
Yes.
Cool. And they're in color.
Where is it? I'm not
Okay,
seeing,
great.
is that,
Like a draft, it's part of
oh,
the,
it's,
It says library up
well, I
top.
guess they're all labeled draft, but Putney Library operating.
Oh, okay.
what was this for? General
Let me know when you guys are all
Hers looks so much
ready.
nicer.
Sorry, maybe things were slightly in the wrong order for me. Okay, I think I have it.
Yeah, hers is a little different.
There's 2 pages of Putney
Right.
Library
Okay.
operating.
All right. Okay, we're all good.
3, right, 3,
Ready to party?
2
Okay.
sheets, 3 pages.
The way I have this laid out is we are looking at the budget for fiscal year 2024, which is the light blue columns all the way to the right on my spreadsheet. The fiscal year that we're in right now, 2023, is the purple column, and the last complete fiscal year 2022, is the pink columns all the way on the left. And up here we're in the revenues. Here this is all the different money that the library takes in through things like fee for service, like printing. You see the in-house book sale, the fines, which is actually just donations for late books and payment for missing books, and our out-of-town fees. We also have, of course, the town allocation and the monies that the trustees put in for fundraising. We also have spaces for grants, which generally we don't put anything in for anticipated miscellaneous grants. And we can take a look at those, just the revenues to begin with. There's a few things that I've reduced a little bit to bring them more into line with reality, including the in-house book sale and printing fees. I've also brought the fines, the anticipated fines income down a little bit, just to match. We're obviously coming off of a couple of very strange years where things like the in-house book sale and printing were much reduced, but this is the first fiscal year since fiscal year 2019, that the building's been open back to its full capacity, its full hours for the entire fiscal year. So I'm hoping that we see these lines a little bit bigger, a little bit higher here. So that's those first 4 lines. Then we have the endowment interest. The trustees have their fundraising money in an endowment, and that hopefully will earn interest again. For that money in when it does. We have the town allocation for this year, 210,160, which is up 8.45%. The Edwall donation, is up $1,000 this year at Karen's direction. the transfer from fundraising from the trustees is $5,000. That's one of the two lines that are directly from the trustees fundraising. This year I put our courier grant in. Usually I put it in as a zero line, a $0, but we do receive it every year. And it's in 2022, the State Department of Libraries received ARPA money and gave us extra. So you'll see that in the actual, we received 1,074, but I have it in for 500. And the trustees appropriation, the trustees have put in $1,000 extra as well. So their appropriation is $20,000. And the full budget is down here in this total line, $252,410, which is a 7.87% increase. Are there any questions about the revenue lines?
I guess I'm not quite understanding how the interest is working. So you have the interest, let me scroll up. You have the budget, and then the actual is zero, and then the budget, the projected
is
budget.
3,000.
So
yeah,
how does that work?
do you want to speak to that? I believe that last time we made the transfers at the end of the fiscal year, we had not realized any interest from the endowment.
Okay,
Over the last year, yeah.
Right.
but we anticipate that will change?
Not
One hopes.
necessarily.
Okay.
It's a guess.
Okay.
You know, we try to do what we've done the previous year.
Yeah,
And then for 22, we look at that too. And even though revenue might be higher for the end of that fiscal year, we can't anticipate that we're gonna get that again. And if you go low, you might come in high. So it's always like an estimate.
yeah.
And what is the size of the endowment?
The endowment is, I want to say 300, almost 300 even right
Yeah.
now.
300,000.
300,000.
Yeah. So,
Give or take, depending on the day, but right in that neighborhood.
Okay.
so this would represent a 1% draw. It's not a draw per se. You just base it on interest earned for what you
Right.
take.
Correct.
So you
Yeah.
don't have a regular draw based on a percentage.
Okay.
Excuse me, Emily, what are the line items that correspond to the anticipated increase in the budget? I'm trying to figure it out, just looking at these numbers. What's going up most
You
significantly?
mean what costs are going up?
Yeah,
We're right now we're just looking at revenues, but I promise to get to the expenses once we move on.
fine, thanks.
Okay.
I don't know whether this is a question for Karen or for you, Emily. The Edwald Fund increase, what does that do to the principal of the Edwald Fund?
It's interest.
Okay.
So we've been giving, this appropriation every year.
For a long time, yeah.
But we got down to a low point where we weren't able to give the full 5,000.
Right.
So, 1 year it was like, what, $2,000, right? And then I built it up a little more, and we're in a good place right now, but what we don't want to do is bring that to zero, because we're not going to be making any interest on it,
Bring the principal to zero.
Right.
Right.
Right. So I have to watch that every year.
So we might want to treat that ultimately like an endowment draw and just do it as a percentage as opposed to,
Right.
that wouldn't make it stable necessarily, but it would make it
Right.
predictable and wouldn't eat into the principal.
Right. So last year we ended up with like $17,000 check. And I was just like, well, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So that told me, well, okay, I can give a little more this
Little
year.
more, yeah.
And it goes to 3 departments. So it goes to the library, it goes to the highway, and it goes to the general fund. So that's like $15,000 that goes out in 1 year. So.
I have a question, Emily. I don't really understand the difference between transfer in from fundraising and trustee appropriation.
No one does, but I'll explain now.
Oops.
Trustees appropriation is sort of just goes into the general fund, or I'm sorry, into our operating budget. The transferring from fundraising was the trustees placing some of the money in the endowment in honor of Stephen Coronella, the former director, for items that he wanted to support, and that was programming for children and adults, and also we used it for that and for the parks passes. So that was sort of like added as a different chunk, but ultimately it's coming out of the same bucket. It's just the intent is different.
Okay.
And ultimately is $24,000 as from the trustees.
A total.
25,000. It's $25,000 from the trustees.
Where's the other?
There's the 5,000 who's transferred from fundraising, and then there's the trustee appropriation this year is $20,000.
Right. Oh, right, next year. Yes.
The blue.
I guess I don't really understand what you mean when you say from the trustees. Like, what does that mean, from the trustees?
Oh, great question. The trustees, they're so generous. The trustees do, they are, but the trustees do, it's not from their pockets, but the trustees do fundraising every year. Perhaps you've even received a appeal in the mail in the past couple of weeks. This is the season that we send out our appeal. But the trustees do fundraising every year through their annual appeal, and in previous years it's been also through our book sale, the book sale event, to help defray from the operating costs of the library and contribute to it in this way. So when I say, I'm saying it's from the trustees.
It's fundraising. It's a couple different categories of fundraising, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And, okay.
But none of that comes from the endowment?
Correct.
The endowment is a
Right.
completely separate line.
Yeah, so there's two
Right.
different sources of income. So they're fundraising is one, and then the endowment's the second.
Yeah, but it's just that fundraising has a number of different revenue lines there, but they're all really coming from, like you said, Emily, they're coming from the same bucket. Yeah.
They're essentially coming from the same bucket. The endowment interest is
That's separate, yeah.
from the endowment, and then the fundraising is kept in a checking account.
Okay.
Thank you for these questions. I look at this too much and just talk about it like it's nothing, but we have some new select board members, and I'm happy to fill you in. So please do pipe up with those questions. Anything else about the revenue? I will move on to expenditures, which starts here with the first one is cleaning. So just to explain the way the expenditures are broken down, the yellow lines are summary lines, and they're a total of the lines below them. So cleaning is just one. It's a nice one to start with, because you can see it's $3,900, and then above it, it's not $3,900 twice, it's only $3,900.
Okay.
So it's $3,900. Our cleaning has just gone up. We get the library cleaned once a week.
And Charlie, can I just comment? You asked that question before about which line items are what might be concerning Emily.
Yeah.
I always find it the easiest line to look at for me is the variance percentage, because that tells you, it just gives you an indicator of how much it's increasing compared to last year. And then if you look and that line happens to be $100 going to $112, but it's a 12% increase, it doesn't matter that much. But if it's 10,000 going to, 11,200, then that's a jump. So that percentage, I find that a very helpful line on these, and you have it on, it's the final line on your budget, your printed budget.
Yeah, I tried to make it easy by having both. Last year, I can't remember which one I didn't include the percentage or the dollars
Percentage,
variance.
yeah.
Yeah, but now we have both, so to try to make it clear. So after cleaning, we have the programs, and this is the zone, this is the zone where the trustee, that it's defrayed from above with the transfer and from fundraising, the programs and the parks classes. I've requested $50 extra for parks passes this year. Those have been going up. Repairs and maintenance, our building is aging. You can see in the last complete fiscal year 2022, it looks very out of hand, but I want to explain that we received about $17,000 in grants in that fiscal year, and some of that went towards outdoor furniture and the construction of an outdoor shed to hold it all. And so those expenses for some of the grant-related things are in the repairs and maintenance expenditure from that year. So it looks like a lot of bad things happened, but actually some really great things happened and are covered in that line item. But I've requested $10,000 for repairs and maintenance in the upcoming fiscal year. Below that, we have our circulating materials. These are the things that you all think of us providing. The adult and kids books, magazines and newspapers, videos and audiobooks, and digital content. Digital content is downloadable ebooks and audiobooks. It's streaming content through Canopy, and it's Mango languages and consumer reports. So it's the things that you can use from home without entering the library using your library card number. And we have I requested small increases for adult and children's books, and then the cost of some of our newspapers have gone up. For office supplies are just general, what you think of as office supplies. Postage, we don't so much use postage for interlibrary loan anymore, but the spirit of this expenditure line is to support interlibrary loan, which is now done mostly through a courier, which we receive the grant up in the revenues to help us with from the State Department of Libraries. The courier is a much more cost-effective way to move the many, many books that Putney Library patrons read.
Hey, Emily, I have a question. I'm just curious about the 22% increase with the newspapers and magazines.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious how much that's gone up, and I'd love to know more about that. Have we increased the numbers of newspapers? No, it's just their rates have gone up that much?
Yes. Yep, yeah, and I'm taking a hard look at how we provide periodicals right now. I don't think that the Daily Reformer and the New York Times that we have at the library are going away anytime soon. There are certainly a large number of people that come and use those. But in terms of magazines and other periodicals, I'm taking a look at the use of those and whether there's something that we can provide as a digital product that's more cost effective. A lot of magazines are also just straight up going out of business.
Yeah.
It's a tough time for magazines. Yeah. So I'm taking a look at that and hoping to use this budget line, a little bit differently than the way we've been using it with our different subscriptions. But no, we are not. This is not the result of adding things. If anything, some of the magazines that we have been providing in the past have ceased to exist and are kind of dropping off.
Yeah, thanks.
But great question.
I think it probably reflects also decreased readership forces them to increase their prices.
Yeah. Yep, that's part of it too. So we're in a tricky moment where people still want, we have some patrons that still really want paper magazines and take them out, and then we have other people that would really love a digital product. So we're trying to serve both. And presently we don't have a digital magazine product, but we do have the digital New York Times right now. Okay. Though that is actually not covered. The trustees fund that out of fundraising. So it's not reflected in this budget. I'm just bobbing down here. You'll see the technology line has gone down a little bit. We now own our copy machine. So that expense has gone down a little bit. Also, the telephone internet line reflects the anticipated E-rate grant. We receive a grant each year to defray from the cost of the fiber connection at the library.
Which they have a different fiber connection than we do at Town Hall. So we're not able to get that grant.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that grant is just for public libraries and schools.
Right.
Yeah. The salaries line reflects the 6% increase that all of the town employees have. Ours looks a little bit, it doesn't read as a solid 6% because we have a flat amount that we've left in to cover our substitutes. So it's not a perfect.
So Emily, we might be able to adjust that for those folks, to just get it up to 6%.
Do you want me to refigure it and put it in as a solid 6%, Karen?
Yes, I would rather see it at 6% because that's what I'm asking for.
Okay,
So-
I will, I'll make that change and send it to you tomorrow.
Okay.
Moving on, the benefits and insurance, these are just the estimates and costs and actual costs that Karen has provided to me.
Okay, so the library has the same benefits as the town does.
That's correct.
Okay.
I've got a question on the health insurance. Going up 19.70%. Is this a typical increase from year to year? And if not, shouldn't some consideration be given to switching carriers?
That's a question for me. So,
Okay, the array? Okay.
So, typically it goes up every year, and we have no control over that. I look at MVP and compare it to Blue Cross Blue Shield. Blue Cross Blue Shield right now is higher, and it has less benefits. So, I'm staying with MVP. There are other components I look at, because the town provides 90-10 coverage. So basically, the town pays 90% of a plan for each employee who's on it, and then the employee pays 10%.
MVP stands for?
It's an insurance
insurance,
provider.
yeah.
Okay. Has the town ever considered hiring or engaging an insurance broker to try to get a better rate?
No, we go through VLCT. They basically do all of that for us,
Okay,
and we don't have many options,
true, yeah,
But they are, for all practical purposes, our insurance broker.
okay.
Yes.
We've gone away from them at times in the past and gone with independent insurance. That worked for us for a period of time, and then it got more expensive, so we went back
Right.
to the passive program is what
Right.
it's called.
Yeah.
And that covers both our comprehensive as well as our benefits, et cetera. They're separate, MVP.
Right.
And the underwriter for the town insurance are different. But it's all part of a package that they're able, and the reason they're able to do better is because they're negotiating for all the member towns that are passive members, which is the majority of the towns in the state.
Right.
So,
So that every year, once the premium goes up, that has to be covered by revenue in order to balance the budget.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we sort of expect that this is gonna happen and have to deal with it, right?
Well, it's hard to control, Charlie.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
It's,
I'm sure it is.
there are options that I've looked at and in the past I've considered, and, we can go to 85-15 or we can do 80-20, right?
I think we looked at that last year,
Yeah,
and in
we
the
certainly
end,
talked about
it wasn't really a big
It wasn't a big deal.
saving,
Right.
so,
The whole thing is when I have to start shaving numbers, I have to look at more than one line item.
Right.
So I can tell you right now, I did the math, all right, if we went 85-15, we'd probably save about $41,000. If we go 80-20, we're gonna save about $55,000, okay? That's a big number to me because every penny on a tax rate equates to about $25,000. So on 55,000, that would be 2 cents, we could drop the tax rate.
Right.
So if I was able to do that in more than one area, it would probably make sense. You know, looking at 6% raise versus a 3%, you know, there's another $20,000. So
Yeah.
I have to be creative. If this budget for '24 is ugly at best, we're not the only town struggling with numbers right now. I've talked to 2 other towns. It's, I can't predict '24. I'm very nervous about '23. And I've already talked to department heads, and I'm gonna do a memo in writing that if we don't need to spend it, don't.
The problem, Charlie, with looking at that aspect of our insurance policy is that it transfers that financial burden directly to our employees.
And that's a
So,
morale issue.
well, it's a morale issue, it's a competitiveness issue, et cetera.
That's an issue, yeah.
You know, there are other ways we could look at it. Karen and I have talked about this, and I think Karen and Eileen have talked about it, of, you know, offering program, you know, covering an employee but not the additional spouse or family members, et cetera. But then those costs for employees really skyrocket, and our ability to remain competitive as an employer is super important. And you know, I mean, one of our competitors is the state, because they hire people with similar skills to some of our employees, and they offer excellent benefits. So if we start cutting our benefits, we're at risk of
We're gonna
And
lose.
surrounding
losing
towns.
employees.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right,
Yeah.
So,
and I'm not willing to risk that.
Yeah,
That's
well,
not a
that
risk
makes
I'm gonna
sense.
take.
I don't know why, that makes
Yeah.
no sense.
Yeah, so, but I look at different, variables, and it's not easy. It's
and there's,
not-
for health insurance, there's really only 2 providers. I mean, it's MVP or Blue Cross.
Right.
There's possibly different models that we could explore.
I mean, with those providers?
Yeah, I mean, like, different ways of doing it. So like Brattleboro does a high deductible plan for all of its employees, and then it gives each employee a certain amount for their HSA. And then they have an HRA, which is basically covering the rest of the deductible.
Right.
And then the actual cost to the town and to the employers are less, and it's kind of like a self-funded plan, so I think it's a little more stable. You hope for a good year when people are relatively healthy and not
Right.
drawing from
Right.
those accounts. So there are other models, but not guaranteed to necessarily save us money in the long run. But there are other things that we can explore.
And we have done that in the
Yeah.
past. We've done HSA, HRA models. You know, one disadvantage for us for those is it takes administrative time. Exactly. So, you know, do you ultimately end up saving? Hard to know for sure, but it's definitely a more complex equation for the financial director, so.
The HRA too that the town offers pays 75% of a deductible on any given plan. So you start changing plans, like Eileen pointed out, your deductible might jump from 3,000 to 6,000, then the town's doing 75% of a larger number. Does it, you know, do you save any money? So.
Significant amount, yeah, right.
So, yeah.
As far as that number this year though, 19.7% is a very significant increase.
That's a pretty big jump.
But we've had comparable increases in years in the past, but it's very variable. I mean, some years it's small. That's the exception, not the norm. But, you know, it tends to range in the ballpark of 12 to 20%, I would say.
And that's a function of what?
It's just a function of the reality of health insurance in our country.
And inflation.
It's our broken healthcare system.
Yeah.
Right. Universal healthcare would be great.
Would solve that.
Would definitely go a long way to helping that. number go down.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, do we have more discussion on the benefits? All right, let's scroll down.
All right, let's keep chugging here. Training and travel is professional development, and travel when we go to meetings, just reimbursement for mileage.
Okay.
For those things, utilities, this has gone up. Water, sewer charge, electricity, and heat, and these are. Karen and I worked on these together, just with the library's typical usage.
Okay.
I did just want to throw in that I did just apply for a grant to switch all of the library lighting over to LED, which would
Okay.
help. Yeah, so fingers crossed for that one. I just applied for it. We don't know whether we got it or not, but I think it was a compelling project for the intention of the grant.
Okay, good.
And then contingency, we always do a zero. This is just a zero budget line, and this is where when the trustees elect to fund something above and beyond the budget that is not included here, it goes into the contingency special projects line, so that just to track it for us, so that at the end of the fiscal year we can make the transfers with Karen from the trustees fundraising account into the general fund, into the library budget or the general fund.
Okay.
You can see here in 2022 that the $2,090 is where they paid for the New York Times digital subscription. And then the last line is the liability insurance, the number that I got from Karen, that she got from, or the estimate you got from VLCT.
Oh, it's also gone up, I guess. Wow.
15%
Sheesh.
is what they told me to calculate.
Huh.
I wait until like December, and when I get the real number, then I'll switch it over and talk to Emily. But I don't like putting large numbers in there, knowing that, it's gonna be lower.
Okay.
Liability for what?
Like
Slip
just
and
liability
fall.
insurance, yeah.
It's VLCT.
Oh, that's
It's the
their,
passive,
okay.
Yeah.
It's essentially our comprehensive
Plus we have workers'
okay.
comp too.
insurance.
Yeah.
That's covered under liability as workers' comp?
Workers' comp, yeah.
Okay.
Let me see.
I mean, that's just our general insurance policy for the library.
Yeah, it's,
Right,
it's, for the, it's the
passive,
building
yeah.
insurance.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And notable is that the difference from revenue for budget 22 and actual 22 is 293. I think if my math is right, that's a tenth of a percent. So that's pretty good budgeting.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
It is.
We do have a question from Mr. Fairman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two brief points. Excuse me. The first one is I wish to make a constructive suggestion here, but to do so I need to return to the matter of the furniture and shed that were purchased with a grant, and this is somehow folded into the maintenance expenses.
Howard, I just want to make clear for everybody, since so some of the furniture was purchased and it was reflected in I think it was in the supplies line, but things like the assembly of the furniture, the staining of the furniture, and the construction of the shed, and the purchase of all the materials to make the shed were in the maintenance and repairs.
Thank you for that clarification. As it happens, my point stands, which is, for clarity, generally accepted accounting principles want clear categorization of revenues and expenses. So I would suggest that in the document that you provide for the town report, that you at least consider making it explicit by saying under revenue there is a grant, name it however you wish, or was a grant I should say, and under expenses there was, now this is actually a capital expense, not a maintenance expense for furniture and shed, which would probably include everything involved in obtaining that. So for example, you buy some furniture which apparently came in a natural state, and you had to stain it, it probably would be legitimate to put all that in one heading. But the way you have accounted it at present, one needs a clarification as to what went on, while if revenue and expenses were explicitly and correctly categorized per generally accepted accounting principles, it would be a lot clearer what was done there. But I'm offering that as a constructive suggestion. And now I move on to my other point, which is the town manager is expecting me to ask, is there any deferred maintenance that has not been budgeted?
Excellent question. The capital improvements plan.
Right, which has been tabled, but I will tell you that these budgets at this moment do not have any budgets built in for capital.
It doesn't have a capital.
No.
It doesn't have a capital fund line item, in other words.
No, it does not.
Right.
Madam Chair, if I may clarify, I think I may have asked an unclear question, because I asked about the maintenance line item, which generally maintenance is not considered to be a capital expense.
Right.
But I can tell you that in towns around the state, something that comes back to bite taxpayers is maintenance was referred to during a number of years until this became impossible, and then all of a sudden, that's when it bites them. And my query is simply, in the library, at the library, is there any deferred maintenance as opposed to capital expense? Any deferred maintenance that has not been budgeted?
I'm going to say in terms of things that are strictly maintenance or maintaining systems that we presently have that we're not planning on replacing. No, we do, we clean the air conditioners and the furnace annually, as well as the other air handling things. And, that kind of maintenance is within this budget. Mm-hmm. Replacement of certain systems and the capital improvements plan is its own story that, we do have that schedule, but you're right, that's not covered in the repairs and maintenance line. But no, there's no lingering deferred maintenance at the library.
Excellent, and thank you.
We did, as you might recall, Mr. Fairman, relatively recently restained, which was close to becoming a deferred maintenance. Also, at some point, it'll hopefully be roughly 15 years from now, we will have to replace the roof.
Okay.
But we do have a roof replacement fund within the general fund.
Right.
For that, for town buildings in general. So
the other two capital improvement things that are on the schedule are replacement of the air conditioning units, two of which have failed, and we're looking at replacing them with heat pumps, which can do both air conditioning and heating, and replacement of the carpet, which will have to happen eventually, but is less emergent.
Okay. Mr. Fairman?
Madam Chair, referring to the library director's comment a moment ago, new heat pumps, it's most likely that Efficiency Vermont will pay most or almost all of the costs of installing heat pumps. So I certainly would suggest that Efficiency Vermont be asked to come to the library and do a consultation, because they will pick that up, and they may have picked up a lot of other things. For example, I can tell you that LED lighting here where I live, I have LED bulbs that are as bright as a 100-watt traditional bulb. They draw only 14 watts. That's an 86% energy saving. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fairman.
Okay, thank you. Karen wants to talk for a second.
So I just want to say that the library does a tremendous job landing grants, and Emily is very proactive in looking for grants to cover costs for what she does over there. So that's been a good thing. And Emily and I will talk occasionally too and support one another, but grants right now, that's what we gotta be grabbing because we just don't have the capital to make those changes. So, great job, Emily. I appreciate everything you do. And
Thank you, guys.
your board as well.
They are great. So are you. Thank you, Karen. I just to Howard's point just a minute earlier, Efficiency Vermont is, their subsidies are involved in the quote that I'm seeking right now for the heat pumps, and also their discount on the LEDs was part of the grant application that I just submitted. So I think partnership with them makes, of course, funding from a granting entity much more compelling. So I'm really happy to have that. Were there any other questions about any of the expenses or the budget as a whole?
Does anybody else have any questions?
No.
Does any member of the public have questions for about the library budget? Janice?
Hi, I don't have a question, but I just want to make a comment again. I just want to state on behalf of the library board that we have implicit trust in Emily and her management of our resources, both financial and otherwise. Her facility of identifying and obtaining grants, and also of Julia, is just astonishing to me all the time. I've written grants myself, and I just can't imagine how they manage to get these all done. So thank you, Karen, for recognizing that. But I just want to state to the select board that Emily and her staff, our staff, have the full trust and support of the library board.
Okay, thank you. Are there any?
Yeah, just Kevin Chapney, the treasurer of the trustees, the library trustees, and work at Putney School as the library director and technology director. And just to piggyback on Janice and what Karen has said, Emily is so careful with the town's money and with going out and getting grants. And every time we have a board meeting, she's talking about a new grant or two or three. The library is seeing 2,100 plus, Emily, you can correct me, 2,100 plus visits a month, and is, really strong under Emily's leadership, continues to be. Emily's extremely careful, easy to work with as the treasurer, and takes good care of the town and the finances.
Okay, thank you.
And she's a pleasure to work with.
And she's a pleasure to work with.
Oh, stop. You guys are in Thank you all.
Okay, are there any other questions about the library budget, the proposed library budget? Okay, let's move on. I have been told in the past that it would be good to take a break. Is this a good time to take a break for us?
I think it would be good.
5 minutes?
Yeah.
All right.
That's good.
So we're gonna take a 5-minute break and we will reconvene at, whatever that would be. Let's reconvene at 7:40.
Oh.
So we've come back. It's about 7:40. All water braked and bio braked. So the next thing on our agenda is the highway. Now, we have a lot of stuff going on here. I'm wondering if we want to possibly table some of this and then meet on next week as a special meeting to go over possibly the highway, the general fund.
Long-term and capital.
Long-term, yeah, all of
Those
this,
could all go
all
together.
of these, the D, E, F, and G, would that make sense?
Would it make sense to just go through the highway budget, so you have a sense of what to look at, right?
Okay.
Like for the general fund, and
Okay.
the cemetery, right? Because we're not gonna do line by line.
No, okay.
We, this just can't happen, all right? So basically, what we're looking at, you're looking at revenue and then you're looking at expenses, okay? And with any budget, your revenue has to equal your expenses, balances out.
Or exceed. We
So-
won't argue there.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about the highway, let's just look back to this, we're gonna talk about the highway and then we're going to table all the
Yes.
E, F, and G, and the one that we tabled already, H, till next week's, December 7th. That's what
And
we're
we're gonna
deciding.
schedule another meeting.
Next week, okay, all right,
Yeah.
so
Um,
just wanna get that out of the way before we move on to the heck.
yeah.
And I think that, I mean, that was a good presentation. We don't need to do line by line though, even with the library budget, I don't think. I think it's more about questions, but I might be wrong. I mean, that's up to you to.
I mean-
I think it's incumbent upon us to have reviewed these sufficiently enough to know that if you have questions, what they are,
And then you bring
if they're
it
about a
back.
specific
Right.
line item.
I agree. On the other hand, when I was first on the board, a lot of these numbers made no sense to me,
Yeah.
so,
That was a
it
kind
was-
of a nice overview.
Primer.
yeah, so because we have three
Yeah.
people who haven't gone through the budget process
Right.
before, maybe that would be a good way to dive into it.
Boy, it just was so much easier to review, the format of hers is so much easier than this format.
Well,
you
this is
know?
a NIMRIC
Yeah.
special.
This is NEMRIC and this is what ends up going in the town.
Yeah,
report.
yeah,
So
I know, I'm just like, wow, it's a
It's
difference
better to look at it.
to
you know.
get acclimated to
Right.
it, yes.
So again, you have budget 2022 and then you have the actuals, right, which coincide with our audit. And then the budget for 2023, which we're in right now, and then the actuals that have been spent to date, right? And then we're working on fiscal year 2024 budget, which is pretty much what I do, folks, is I look at 22, and if we're over on any line items, I end up increasing in the 24 budget to cover the costs. So for the highway, the fuel went up $20,000 to, because it's $6 a gallon right now.
Yeah,
All right, so in '23, I'm gonna tell you, we're already gonna be over budget on fuel lines. And it's just the way it is. Hopefully, come '24, we'll have a surplus, but I don't know that yet. Heat, so propane is at the town garage, which that price went down for this year, which is good. Electricity is another thing that has gone up. And fuel oil, so the town hall, heating is gonna go up. So basically, that's my process when I'm trying to guess on a budget that's out 2 years.
I was wondering,
you can't predict the
I
future.
know, and then health insurance also went up. It goes up every year, so I have to accommodate for that too. Now, in the highway budget, so in the revenue, like Emily talked about grants, so I know we're gonna get a structures grant. I know we're on the list for a paving grant as well, and we always get a grants and aid. So I usually have those numbers. So on page 1, you will see under intergovernmental grants, those numbers. And then, there is some other revenue, but the biggest line item that you need to be aware of is the very first one, property taxes. So in the 2024 column, what has to be raised to cover the operating expenses by taxes is going to be $1,076,726, which is a 7.09% increase,
For just the highway.
just the highway. Now, we're looking at, between 7 and 8% cost of living, right?
Right.
And that varies too throughout the year. So, and for '24, it could be a different number. right? So realistically, having a 7% increase, that makes sense to me with what's going on today. My hope is it's gonna be lower, you know, in 2024, but. So the first page is your total revenues. And then page 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6 are the expenses.
Can I ask a question
Sure.
before we move past? In line 1, on both our highway and general,
Yes.
if you look at that top line that identifies what column you're looking at, budget FY 2023, so that's the number that we need property taxes to account for that. And actual, it says FY 2023 PD 5, which means period 5, which essentially is the 5th month. So
Right.
why do we show that as complete, even though
Where are you looking at?
I'm
On the
looking at
general
the
fund?
property taxes, no, well, highway fund.
You know why? Because we transfer money, Josh. So all the money comes into the general fund, and then because we have to raise that amount for the highway department, we do a general journal entry,
Right.
and then we put that money right into the highway funds.
But we haven't collected all our taxes, so
No.
if we look also at the general fund, you're showing budget versus actual is only a difference of about $90,000.
Right, and there's gotta be more, another journal entry made. So, you're right, it's,
I'm not questioning it, I'm just wondering why that shows as that complete at this stage in the game when because if you look at period 5 on all the other well, once we get to expenditures,
Right.
you know, you look at it and you think, well, we're a little less than halfway, so as long as it's a little less than halfway, that makes sense.
right.
But this doesn't make sense from that perspective, and I'm not second guessing why you're doing it, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, no, there's just a journal entry that needs to be.
That hasn't been made.
You're right.
Okay,
That
of
has
where
to
the
happen.
actual is currently.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense, thank you.
I had a question about the state aid to highways. Why did that go down
State aid,
or projected to go down?
the 32.
Because I thought that was based on mileage.
Well, this is what I do, okay, so we've already collected 66, right? So if I double that, right,
Yeah,
it's what, 132. So there's some other money sometimes that comes in, but I'd rather not have it higher, because if we don't get the money, then we're gonna be short.
okay.
So this way,
That's not a guaranteed number? I thought that was based on the number of miles we had in town. Is that the wrong, am I thinking that?
That's part of the formula, certainly.
it's part of it, but it's not all of it.
Okay.
So there are other monies that sometimes come in,
Okay,
so, but right now, my calculation is based on the actual that we've already collected in this year.
And you're doubling that.
okay,
And I'm doubling it because there's 4 payments,
okay,
so,
okay.
yeah.
And if you look at 22 for that, Eileen, you know, the projected was 122 and the
Right.
actual was
Actual is higher.
143,
Okay.
so it's quite a
Right.
bit higher. So
Yeah.
that one
It
has
just fluctuates.
more leeway than
Okay.
one might think.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because what I'm hoping is that for 23, that number will be more than 140, but looking at this number right now, it does not appear it's gonna be.
Although we're only in period 5, so,
Right, but we've already received 2 payments,
out of 4.
yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
okay.
Fiscal year starting
July,
July 1.
right,
Yes.
Okay, which is why the number 5 is what
Right.
it is.
right.
Yeah.
So, again, I could put it to 140 and,
But it might not come in at that.
it may not
Yeah.
come in at that,
Okay.
so.
All right, any other questions about revenue?
And Karen, you might have already said this, but that if you look at state paving bridge funds, we have 175 where we had nothing else in the last 2 years. That's because we're only eligible every third year for that significant chunk of funding. We
Yeah,
can
sometimes
then
it's
apply,
like-
we can apply sometimes for additional,
Right.
but we are, I think I'm right in saying that the state, they're sort of obligated to give us that much money every third year, is that correct?
It's either, I thought it was 5. It depends on the town too, so, you know, we'll get a grant and then we go down to the bottom of the list. And
Right.
you just gotta kind of work your way up. But it might have been 4 years ago that we had a paving grant. I think it was when Chip was here.
Was it that long ago?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what's the structures grant?
Structures grant is for like bridges,
Culverts, bridges.
culverts, you know, box culverts that, you know,
Okay, that's
usually.
different than the bridges fund. Yeah. Paving,
Well, I think
paving and
bridges-
bridges is
Structures
Yeah.
is more like replacing and upgrading, and this would be more like maintenance, wouldn't it?
What,
State,
structures?
state paving and bridge funds, that's more like,
That's really paving. I mean, or that's historically, that's an
Right.
interesting question, because I would think of bridges falling under the structures department. That
Yeah,
may just be a
bridges
labeling
do.
issue.
Yeah, so I can just take the bridge off of there
Well,
because
and just so I understand, grants and aid, what's that?
grants and aid is for the stormwater that comes off our roads, all the ditching that we're doing.
Okay,
Now we have to be compliant by
Yeah.
2025.
okay.
But we have to apply for that on an ongoing, but we've applied for that every year.
Yeah.
And we only get it if we apply for it. We also only get it, we only really will stay eligible for it if we use
Yes.
what we
Apply.
proposed, well, yeah, exactly. If we don't, you know, towns that apply for that grant don't use it properly in that year, they're not eligible to reapply the next
Right.
year. So Brian's very cautious about sort of metering it out so that he's done with it year by year so we can keep reapplying.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's also, it's sort of an unfunded, funded mandate. It's a weird thing because all of that money, what we do with grants and aid is an effort to stay in compliance with state requirements that require, it's part of actually, a significant portion of it is about groundwater protection. So it's about preventing runoff into streams, et cetera. So it's sort of a complex formula where it goes and comes from.
Can you give me by any chance an explanation of the name, just so that I might remember what it means
I
next
can't, I
time?
don't know why it's, I
grants and aid.
don't know why it's called
Okay.
that. Yeah,
I'll make up something.
yeah.
Lake
I'll think of a name,
Champlain.
right,
That's all you need to know about grants and aid.
Well,
which kind of rhymes.
yeah, although that's a misnomer because it's in fact all the watersheds
It's
in the
going the
state.
other way.
Going the other way,
People,
right.
yeah.
Right.
But it has in abbreviations after that, or in parentheses, WRC. What does that stand for, do you
Because
know?
it used to be run through Windham Regional Commission,
Oh, okay.
and now the state's taking it over.
Taking it over,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. So I'll be asking that question again sometime.
Go ahead.
That's a good question.
Yeah. So, yeah. As far as expenses go, 6% salary increase. I've added one whole person to the highway department
Okay.
and also added a family medical plan to this budget.
This is an employee that we anticipate hiring?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're adding that family is not a family that we're aware of. It's in case
In
we
case
were to
that's-
hire somebody who has a
Right.
family, right? Okay.
Because this past year, what had happened with 2 employees, they were both part-time.
Turned into families, right?
We gave them full-time positions, and one took insurance, and it wasn't in the budget. And that's part of the reason we went over. And I can explain that later.
Karen, where on expenditures do we have salaries for employees?
So salaries are split up because you have general maintenance for the highway department, which is your summer months, April through October. And then you have winter maintenance, which is your winter months. They're different hours. So on page 2, Charlie,
Yeah.
towards the bottom,
Mhm.
it says highway general maintenance
Mhm.
salary. So it's the third line from the bottom. And then the winter maintenance is on page 3,
Mhm.
like halfway down the page. Winter maintenance salaries.
So these are salaries that are paid out to employees just for highway activities?
That's correct.
Okay.
And that's accounting for 6 full-time
Employees?
employees.
But it's really important to remember that the salaries are literally only the salaries, none of the benefits or
benefits.
pension or
Right.
anything else.
Right.
Which is a significant, I mean, that, I think I'm right in saying, Karen, that if you take the raw salary, you almost double it when you add all, I guess it depends on the salary level.
That's been the
But for a lot
case
of people,
for a while,
it's
yeah.
pretty close to
Yeah.
doubling the expense
Mhm.
from what we're paying in salary by the time you add benefits and pension into it.
Yeah, I've done a report on that, and yeah, it's just to say that a highway employee with a family medical plan and all the other benefits, and I calculate vacation and holidays. I don't the sick time because they don't get paid sick time when they leave, so it's not really a benefit. That one person as an hourly employee actually will make more money than a salaried person on the highway department.
Will cost the town more is what you're saying, not,
No,
The value of their package.
right,
Right.
is greater.
right,
Yep. But that's the difference when you have somebody that has a single plan or no plan at
Right.
all.
right.
You know, so it's not apples to apples. But, you know, when I do performance reviews, I let folks know, you know, this is, you know, your hourly, but with all your benefits, this is, you know, it equates to this.
Which does directly reflect what it costs us.
Right,
I mean, you're right.
exactly.
Same,
Right.
different way of saying the same
Yeah.
thing.
Right, I kind of just want to, I mean, and I know it's expensive and all of that, I just want to, while we're talking about how expensive it is, I just want to say how much we value the employees, kind of the
Right.
conversation we were having before.
Okay.
You
Right.
know, that it's, I don't look at that and go, oh, how can we nickel and dime that down? I really want to support
Right.
employees. Of course, we should be paying for insurance and benefits and
And we have
decent
to be
wages and,
competitive right now because all towns are struggling.
Losing people.
yeah.
You know, it's a challenge this year to like be creative with budgets that, you know, and you know, the last thing we really want is to raise taxes. But when you don't control some of the numbers, it's very hard to do that.
And when you don't control a huge portion of the numbers, it's
Right.
really, really hard to do
Right.
that.
Yeah. Also with salaries and benefits, all the benefits, it encompasses about 60% of those budgets.
Of our total budget, yeah.
Yeah,
Which is not uncommon for an
No.
organization.
no,
Yeah.
so.
But I don't think that we don't have extra personnel. We're a pretty lean
We are
operation.
very lean.
So this
Very lean.
is, like it or not, the cost of running the town, and
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely all of our employees are valuable to us.
Yeah.
Another quick question on documentation on page 2. Karen, you pointed out that this down at the bottom, the salary figures are set forth there, and for fiscal 23 budgeted is 160,242, right?
Yes.
Now, the total employee benefits budgeted 154, 172, are those added together? In order, is that the total cost? Because you've got benefits set out in separate line items. In other words, does it cost the town 154 plus 160?
Plus
Yes.
winter salary.
Plus winter salary.
Of 130.
Yep.
Plus all our disability insurance, et cetera.
Yep.
I mean, and dental plan, all of it, well, maybe you totaled that up.
That number plus
Employee
the other
benefits,
two
yeah,
salaries,
yeah.
yeah.
So that the salary is, let me put it another way. The employee benefits are close to the salary. You add them to
The cost of the
154 but 160. So the benefits cost a lot is what I'm driving at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
But, you know, the benefits are your medical insurance, your dental, you have vision, we have,
Health, right.
life insurance.
We're back to the same question.
Dental.
The conversation we were having before. So let's all just work towards universal health care.
There we go.
Right. We save a lot of money that way.
Yeah.
I guess it would come out somewhere else, but it wouldn't be in this,
come out
it
here.
wouldn't be in this budget.
Well,
No, I
and the
can put it
cost
into
would
capital
be less.
improvements, so
Yeah,
that would be a plus.
Well, this is my maiden voyage through this,
Yeah.
so I'm asking
Yeah.
some basic questions.
that's
No,
fine.
You're good, you're good. So, good news is that on page, let me see, page 5, so 3/4 of the way underneath capital and debt service. So equipment principal payments, so it went down.
A chunk.
Yeah, because we just dropped,
Retired.
Oh, because
Yeah.
we're
Two
paying off
payments.
these trucks.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's working,
it's
Yeah.
working.
good.
And this is a good thing. And we have 2 more trucks to pay for. And I think in 3 years they'll both be paid for, so.
Great.
So we're gonna,
But we are transferring money into a capital fund for
Yeah.
replacement.
For new
of
stuff.
yeah,
those, so-
145,000 goes into
Right, so
the
that,
highway capital reserve. So we can build that up. And then.
the equipment principal payment will ultimately disappear and we'll just be paying a steady amount into the capital fund.
That's, and it'll be level, you know,
Yeah.
and then.
And then we won't be spending money on
Right.
interest.
And
Right.
as surplus, we didn't have one in 22, but when we get surplus in the highway department,
It can
that
go
goes
into
into the capital,
Right.
you know, then we
And
can start
normally we
doing
off-
bridges and,
Yeah,
you know, although we would go after the grants because we only have to do like a 20%, 25% match. So, but that's gonna help us, you know, it's, the highway budget should be like the bigger one, but it's not. And, but it is what it is.
What do you mean it should be the bigger one?
Because it takes more, you know, revenue, more operating expenses, but Brian's really good about not spending unless he has to. You know, he cringes when he's gonna get a culvert and it's like, you know, more money. It's like that paving job last year was $36,000 over budget, but it had to be done, you know? And unfortunately, it wasn't in our favor.
And when Karen said that it should be bigger, she's comparing highway fund to general fund.
Yes.
But that's,
Right.
but that varies very much town to town. I mean, you
Right.
can't, you know, it could be bigger, but it isn't, and there are
Right.
good reasons for that.
Yeah.
But
So that's kind of the highway budget in a nutshell, okay? And any other budget you look at, it's gonna kind of be set up the same way, just different, descriptions. But, so the highway budget, the total budget for '24, we're looking at $1,600,701. And of that, $1,076,726 will have to be raised by taxes. So.
Wait, say that again. You have to repeat yourself. The later it gets, the more
I
time I'm
know,
going to ask people to repeat themselves. Now, can you say that?
That means you're gonna be here longer.
The total highway budget
Yes.
is $1,600,701, right? Of that, $1,076,726 will be raised by taxes to cover the shortfall.
Got it.
Which, if you look
It's
at
not
that
really
last
short.
column, reflects a 7% increase
Yes, right.
year over year.
Yeah.
The other column I would request going forward, Karen, is in our current year budget to have a percent change, a percent also.
I can't put that in there.
We've had it in the past.
Not in Nemrick, you haven't.
I think we've had it on spreadsheets.
Really? No,
Yeah,
I've never-
I don't think so.
Yeah. No.
What do you call this system that you use?
NIMRIC.
It's Nemrick.
And what's that?
New England Municipal.
It was
Resource.
Resource.
New England
Yeah.
Municipal Resource
Company.
Council or
Oh,
company
shoot.
or something.
Consulting
Contractors, consultant, yeah, I think that might be right.
Corporation.
Yeah.
It's the state contracted with them. Center, thank you.
Thank you, Cass.
The state contracted with them, I don't know, in the 1800s or
A
something,
long
to come up with a system to host the grand list specifically, and the tax administration. It also does this stuff as well. There's other modules that towns can use to come up with this stuff. It's a Fox Pro program. The state is working to come up with a modern system for tax administration called Vermont Pi, and I don't know what that stands for. I don't know why they went with that. If you Google Vermont Pi, you get a lot of
I'm sure.
advertisements for PIE, yes.
And
Property,
And
something.
yeah.
Anyway, so I don't know if the town, are we planning on keeping NIMRIC as for this portion once the state goes to the,
I haven't,
haven't gone that far.
no,
Okay.
I just don't.
It'll also depend, I mean, one of the reasons we've stuck with NIMRIC, because the NIMRIC has, and we've gone away from them in a couple departments, so it's at
Well,
least
they
somewhat, but.
They will go,
Yeah, this one's gonna go away.
Microsoft is part of,
Exactly, yeah.
Microsoft is part of
Part of the
NIMRIC.
NIMRIC program.
But, yeah, they're gonna be going to a camera system called
Right.
Patriot. And then we're getting off topic here, but the tax administration piece will be administered via the state, via the cloud. And that will host the grand list and tax billing and all these other modules, towns will be on their own.
Which, yeah, my comment about that is it's not inexpensive to change. So,
Right.
this may be an outdated system for our ideal application, but if you start changing over,
Right.
one of the advantages of this is that the different departments can communicate within, the modules communicate with each other, so
Right.
that everything doesn't have to be entered separately, so.
I know these.
Yeah, I'm sure Landmark has some of the
Right.
same, Putney School certainly has some of the same. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that, but
I don't know what
I don't know what the answer would be, it's like, but they all have to work together.
well,
Ideally.
ideally,
Yeah. When the
Talk to the
state
state
starts
about
stepping in, it
Complicates things.
Yeah. It's like,
And again, unfunded mandates
Right.
are
Right.
complicated. So.
right. So can I just make a comment, because I know Swift is on, And I don't know, she had an item for the general fund, and I don't know if you want to give her that now, or?
Oh, right,
It
I
might
guess that's
make
why.
sense.
Yeah, because
Because it may impact the general fund.
okay. Swift, do you want to, put your 2 cents in?
Howard has his hand up.
He just put his hand up. Swift, are you online?
Still awake?
All right, Mr. Fairman?
I'm here, sorry.
Hold on, Swift, I just went on to Mr. Fairman.
Please, she was first, have her go first.
Okay, go ahead, Swift.
Sorry, I missed where we're at. We're still late. This is about budget requests?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, so on September 29th, the Equity Inclusion Advisory Committee voted to make a request to be added as a line item for events and training. So we can do our charge.
Okay.
I don't have much more language than that. I can write something more formal. I've been emailing back and forth with Karen on how to do this in a formal way, and she's like, come to the meeting. And I was like, okay.
So
she's
requesting $10,000.
Thank you.
They are.
The Equity Inclusion Advisory Committee is requesting $10,000 be added to the general fund. So we've tabled the general fund for this meeting, so we wouldn't be acting on that anyway, but.
No, but I think we need to listen for, the purpose of it.
Yeah.
For one, because if I need to add it in there, I can easily take it out, but it's gonna be up to this board.
So.
I can share some more details if I don't have specifics, and I've done some research just with what I've witnessed, what we've spent in the past few years. But I don't have any super specifics, but I'm happy to share some of our details of what I'm thinking.
Before I get to that, I remember last year, must have been last year, some talk about, the Energy Committee at that time had wanted to increase their budget or something like that, but we ended up
fundraising.
There was the fundraising piece, which is a way to go, but we had a resolution for that fund that limited the money to the town hall. And I bring that up only to say that we also had the fundraising resolution. Do we have to create resolutions for added items like that to reserve the funds for a certain committee, or?
No, so like the Conservation Commission has a line item in the general fund.
Okay.
It's like $2,100, it's small. Energy Committee has a line item.
Yep.
They get like $2,500. If they don't spend it, it gets transferred
into that
okay. account.
Okay.
So you could do something like that, but $10,000 is
a pretty good chunk of change.
I think what would be helpful for us is some written description for you, Swift, to be as specific as you can about what that money might be spent on. We don't have to vote on it if it's going to be included in the general fund, but we would like to have a sense of where it's going.
Yeah. So I guess, can you write something formal up? And I think we're going to be talking about the general fund next Wednesday.
Next week, right? You're having a special meeting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can write like a budget. I'll write a little budget up.
So one question I have about it, Swift, you said training and events, and that makes sense. Is that specific? Because, one thing that we haven't had a conversation about recently is, we did some significant training in equity and inclusion work for town employees, but we haven't continued that, and we probably should be doing that. But that's not what you're talking about for the Equity and Inclusion Committee, or are you talking about for employees?
We were talking about for employees, if we're gonna be $5,600 a year, maybe it's our budget, maybe it's a line item on the general budget, that's not separate from our budget, but I think it is equity. It's very clearly our charge, so I would be comfortable, that's what I was imagining. That would be for town employees, and also that it would be open to, committee members. Not just equity inclusion, all committee members. And yeah, I can share more in written. But
So,
yes,
yeah, that would be helpful if that.
that's why it's large. That's because $5,000 of that is training for the entirety of the town employees
Okay.
every year. Because I really think that's something that should be done annually.
Should be ongoing, yeah.
Okay. All right, so you're gonna write something up and come back to us next week. Sound good? All right. Mr. Fairman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, now I have 2 points, so I'll deal with, I'll follow on briefly from what the previous speaker said. It appears that what they are proposing is that they have a line item in, quote, their budget, unquote, for training employees. Now, they are an advisory committee, and therefore actually do not have the powers that our select board has to spend money on something such as training our employees. So I would suggest that really what they should do is make a recommendation as an advisory committee, and you, as our Town of Putney Select Board, decide that you are going to put this training in your budget. Because this is not training of the committee, this is training of employees of the Town of Putney, which I strongly suspect is not within the an advisory committee's purview. So I'll simply mention that for your consideration. Now, the town manager is expecting me to ask this question again. Is there any deferred maintenance in the highway fund that has not been budgeted?
No.
Thank you.
No, he's pretty good. I asked him if he wanted a new salt shed. He said no. I go, what about our town garage? He goes, no, don't need it. So, no.
Okay. Mr. Fairman, has your question been answered?
Yes, I think I may have spoken over someone when I said thank you. Apologies for that, but yes, thank you for the answer.
Okay.
I do think it's a valid point, Swift, and in writing a statement, you should try and clarify, you know, because they might end up ultimately actually being 2 different line items.
Yes.
So just think about what Mr. Fairman's recommendation was and what the breakout would be. You know, if you want to be able to put on events, if the Equity and Inclusion Committee wants to put on events, that would be potentially a line item. But town training of employees in this realm would be a separate line item.
Right.
Probably.
And ultimately, if there was an expenditure of money, you would need to come to us to say, we want to do this, and we would then approve it.
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll write what the equity inclusion would spend $10,000 on in relation to its charge, and you can decide where it goes. If that is taking that and that's actually not, and you put where you want to put it, but I'll put our ideas written down. Thanks.
Okay, sounds good. Are there any other public comments on, what are we talking about? The highway, the highway proposed 2024 budget?
Nope.
No more discussion among the board. Okay, so we have tabled E, F, G, and H for next week. So that moves us to dedication of the town report, select board reminder.
So just a reminder, select board, under recommendation, chooses the dedication of the town report.
Okay.
So, and you all can make a recommendation as well. And dedication is usually done in executive session.
Okay.
And then when the town report comes out, what we try to do, because of the dedication, we try to get the town report to that person, if they're amongst us, and if not, then we don't worry about it, we just mail them.
Okay.
And J sort of falls in the same category, I and J.
Yes.
I mean, these are both things we need to do
Well, one is
With it.
ours, the other one,
The Community Service
Well,
Award is, there's an announcement out to the public now
Right,
that anyone,
sort of nominations.
it's a nomination, yeah.
okay.
And how does that, and where, how does that announcement go out to the public?
I've seen it on, I think I saw it on iPutney and maybe not Front Porch Forum, but I did see it on Facebook.
Could go on the
Is it-
website.
Yeah, is it on the website?
Yes, it's on the website.
So our normal channels of
Yeah.
communication, such as they are.
Right, and I'm just trying to assess, like, what are they? Yeah.
And I don't know, it might be on Facebook, but I can't remember.
I know I saw it recently, and I'm pretty sure I probably saw it on Facebook.
What's the deadline gonna be?
It's in December.
Okay.
I don't remember the date, Charlie.
For nominations.
For nominations,
And
yeah.
then who decides on which nominations, who is awarded based on the
Well, see,
nominations?
Basically, we usually get a written
Yeah.
nomination, and then we'll take a look at it, and then you just decide.
We do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But the deadline for making these decisions is really the deadline for the town report, because both of these end up in the town report.
Right,
so.
and I think it might be by the 28th. If we have any
Actually-
nominations, then you'll look at them.
Okay.
Community Service Award doesn't end up in this year's town report. It typically ends up, because it's awarded at town
Right.
meeting day, so it actually
Yes.
ends up in the next year. But that's usually the sequence, how we.
Yes.
how we-
Who writes the text? Someone's chosen.
It's usually whoever nominates the person.
Or somebody,
Who knows?
it might be somebody who's close to them or has
Right.
a specific
Right.
motivation for doing that. Sometimes it's a select board member or an employee, but it generally is somebody who has that relationship that they
Right.
are able to do that.
Yeah.
It's a kind of a touching thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I guess think about that and send if you have names. I guess send them to Karen, so we can have a pool of names to choose from. So we kind of lumped I and J together. Is there any other discussions on either of those? Is there public comment online? Then we have the social agency appropriation spreadsheet and the social agency policy research that Peg has done.
So in your packet is the social service questionnaire summary. And so Kim put this together.
Long-term debt.
And
these are the responses too. Yeah.
that's correct. And we also are looking at 3 new requests.
Which we've decided to
Petition.
petition for a town meeting.
Yes.
That's what we decided last.
Yeah.
What happened to Grace Cottage?
They're new, so they're one of the ones that came before us last
Right.
meeting. That we said, for this year, we're just
We're
gonna
Right.
require everybody to petition, until we have a chance to overhaul the policy. So that's not gonna be on here
Okay.
because they haven't gotten on the list yet.
They haven't been voted on.
So they're being petitioned, so they're petitioning for an article?
Yes.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Correct.
And we requested that of all 3 of those organizations?
Yeah, and
correct.
anybody else who comes forward this year, just so that we level the playing field and
Yeah,
so we have a chance to go through the research and revamp the policy.
yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I mean, I think, for me, I can't remember who the third one is, but it's next stage.
Next stage, Grace Cottage, and
Winston Prouty.
yeah.
And
Winston
Winston
Prouty.
Prouty. And, I mean, for me, personal comment, but, Grace Cottage and Winston Prouty would fall into these categories for more obvious reasons because they are providers of a specific service that is more like our other organizations. Next stage. So I think that's meaningful for us to have it be petitioned because then it is a discussion that can occur at the town level.
Yeah.
And not just here in the meeting.
Yeah. Do we want to go to public comment first?
Sure, sure.
Swift?
Yeah, I can't see the spreadsheet, and I'm just wondering if Susu and I think Atawi just decided not to continue, but Susu and the Root and Out in the Open all got their applications in.
Out in the Open, the Root Social Justice Center is on the list, but
Susu's not on here.
What-
Susu is
Okay.
not.
And when is the deadline for those, Karen? For people to,
Well, they're supposed to be in now, but Kim gives
I'll
people a little leeway.
yeah.
I was at Susu last weekend. I'll reach out to them again and remind them.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to share just a little bit. It was a fascinating process to go and see what other towns were doing. No other town has, that I reviewed about a dozen different towns.
That's a lot.
None of them had anything as convoluted as us in terms of the way, and so here's two things. One, I think that, I don't think we can make a change to this for this cycle.
Easily,
Right.
no.
Right? But I think it might be I think what we should be aiming for is to give a heads up to people at town meeting that we are considering, somehow, I don't know how to do that, but I think it would be a good idea to let people know that we're considering
I can include
this.
that in our town report, if
So
that helps.
So that's one thing. The other thing that I would like to know is how we got here. Who knows the history of how we got to the policy we have?
It's before your time.
It predates
Wow.
me. I think it was late 90s maybe that this specific one was adopted. But it's an interesting question as to whether, because I seem to remember that it was voted on to adopt that as the policy.
Well, I would like,
But I
if
might
we
be
have
wrong.
some time, if we're not trying to like change this for this town meeting, I'd be really curious to go back and look and find out, because I think knowing that will be helpful in knowing what influenced the town to make this decision, so it might help us be able to more smoothly transition it to a new policy. Because there was no other town that did what we did in terms of percentage of the budget going, what we do.
What we do.
Right.
What we do. No one else did. Waitsfield does, their policy does say 1% of their proposed general funds will go to social services. None of the others had anything stated about.
So how did they make decisions?
I don't know. That's a really good question. Guilford is, such funds as it deems necessary. Essex, which is of course a bigger,
Right.
they have a whole different way of doing it, which is really interesting. They have a committee of people. They look at it more as grants. They have human service focus areas each year. They pick 4 or 5 focus areas, and then people apply for that. It's a way more elaborate process. Many, but not all of the town policies I researched were modeled after the VLCT's model social services appropriation policy.
Okay.
But that doesn't give any guidance of like what percentage of your budget, or, it doesn't give that policy, that guidance at
Do
all.
you know if anybody's adopted that?
A lot of them are written almost exactly.
Yeah.
Like
I'm wondering, I think you might be able to find out what they've appropriated if we looked at their town report.
Right, I didn't go that far.
Okay.
I was just looking at policies.
Yeah, that was my question is, do you have a sense of whether the amount that we're putting into this is
That I don't know.
proportional
I
or
don't know.
comparable to other
I don't
towns?
know.
I
Well,
have
you
no
know, like,
idea
all I
either.
know is Wakefield says 1% of their general funds, so.
Which is significantly less than ours.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So that would be a good question and I'd be happy to do that research, but
Yeah.
especially if I know there's time to do it. You
there's
know, 'cause
definitely
it's
time.
complicated.
Well, you could probably put out on your, whatever it is,
Little
municipal
meeting,
manager,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
that, what percentage of your budget goes to
Right.
social service? That would just be interesting to
Right,
know.
Yeah.
but then here's some other interesting things that different towns are doing. Some towns include social, community, and economic services together. Others have two different funds, one for social services and the other for other services that are not social. And then some towns only have the social services. So different, you know, because I think they're getting at some of this stuff like next stage, like the conversation that I expect we will have around with next
Right,
stage.
what-
You know, does this qualify
Fit
as a
into,
social
right.
service organization? And so different towns have managed that by having funds for social service, more traditional social service agencies, and then other funds for other types of services in town.
Like cultural or,
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, many towns do what we do in terms of prioritizing town-based agencies and those serving town residents. They really have different expectations about what they expect from applicants.
Criteria.
Yeah, not criteria as much as just how much they expect in the application process. You know, some towns, who was it? I forget who it was, that, you know, there was at least one town that asked for, the financial audit of the institution. So went all the way from that end, all the way down to, you know, minuscule amount of information about, you know, just tell us what your, you know, agency does and how it benefits the towns. So anyways, I think that this is a good thing to dig into. Yeah.
It sounds like we can do it however we want.
Well, we can certainly do it however we want, if the town want, you know,
Obviously,
like,
right.
you know. I mean, there's no.
I think that's true, although I think that ours may not be an ideal formula, but I think having a formula
Yes.
makes a lot of sense, because for this to be annually arbitrary
Well, it
would
could be
could be
that could not be
incredibly
in their
time-consuming.
policy, but might be in their practice, you know, so.
Right.
You know, I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm only going by what I can pull
Yeah,
up as their
I'd be
policy.
curious to see what they appropriate, you know, over a couple of years.
Yeah.
And how many agencies are there and are they consistent?
But a lot of them do the same thing of, you know, once you've petitioned, and, you know, and you're on, then you're on, you know, for the.
Indefinitely until,
Indefinite.
yeah.
Or for maybe, some of them had like for 3 years, and
Then they have
as
to
long as you, yeah,
re-petition.
then you have to re-petition, or as long as you didn't, you know, as long as you don't ask for any more money.
Right, right.
But, yeah, it's quite, it'd be curious for you to put it out, the percentage.
I will ask. The other thing I want to ask is how many towns actually put the request as an article?
The whole social service budget
Yes.
request as an article.
Yes.
Not individuals, because we wouldn't want to have
All of
18
them,
articles.
Well, Newfane puts every single appropriation in the warning. Every single one, the people.
Has to
vote on.
petition each, has to
They
be
vote on it every year.
Every year? Wow.
Every year. And I think there are other towns that do the same thing, and, you know, it is time consuming, but if there's, you know, the voters are voting on this.
Yeah.
Of course, this is a big list.
Well, there might be a happy compromise where we
Somewhere
use
in
it,
between.
you know,
Right.
every 3 years, like an exemption, every 5 years, we go through, you know, these 3 are on the list, and next year these 3 are on the list, and do whatever it is.
Yeah. Because just for '24, we're looking at like $55,000 for social agencies.
Based on the
On a 2.5%.
the 2.5 of the
Right.
combined
Right.
general and highway. I mean, I don't think that's I mean, we can have more conversation about this because it's now past 8:30. But I mean, I don't think it's a bad idea, just like many of us in our personal budgets, a bad idea to say, oh, you know, we want to tithe this, and we feel like this is the appropriate amount of our budget to,
Right.
you know,
I'm just thankful
whatever
you're
it
working
is.
on this, okay?
Yeah.
I really am,
Well,
because
it's
it's
just
been
been-
2 years that we have gone back and forth on this, and thank you, Peg, for taking the bull by the horns.
Well, it was fun, actually. When I went to it, you know, like, it's interesting to see that all this is out there, and,
Yeah.
you know, I learned a lot, so.
Mm.
And I'm glad, you know, as long as, if we have time to do it, I
Yeah.
think we could do we could make this more functional.
Yeah, I mean, that was the reason why we decided the last meeting to, moving forward for this year,
Yeah.
we're not doing away with the policy, but we're not gonna try to fit other people into it until we know what we're gonna
Right.
be doing
Right.
long term.
Right.
So I guess realistically, we should have something in place by next budget season.
Well,
At the
before we're
latest.
expecting these people, these
To-
organizations to be submitting their annual
Right,
whatever.
and like you said, we do probably need to communicate out to these organizations too, especially if we're gonna be changing their allocations, so that they know what to
So
expect.
they have a warning.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because I think predictability is hugely important
Yeah.
for some
Right.
of these organizations. I also think, I mean, our system may seem convoluted, but it actually works. I mean, I think that, I think it achieves the goal pretty effectively. Whether there's a better way
Right.
to achieve it, I don't know.
Right, right. Right, but the problem is, as we see that the more agencies that request, the less
It
everybody
dilutes it.
gets,
Yeah.
Right.
you know?
Right,
So that's where it kind of gets tricky.
right, and then it's an automatic percentage of the budget, which I don't know if we wanna have a little bit more flexibility on that, if it's a really particularly lean year, maybe we wanna be able to move it back and, down.
But if it's a lean year for us, it's a lean
It's a lean
year.
year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Year
But-
for these agencies,
Yeah.
you know. To me, I think it's more, might be more interesting to be more narrow, more specific about who the money's targeted for. I mean, that would be an interesting conversation, because I know that in some towns it was really about, they're more specific about, you know, vulnerable populations. That's who we're targeting here. It's not about arts and culture, it's about food on the table.
Right,
and,
right.
you know,
Exactly.
that would be an important conversation to have, I think.
So this social service questionnaire summary too also shows you the number of other towns that are funding these particular agencies along with Putney.
So a lot of towns.
Right,
But
so like,
that's
but they're
not
also-
very useful.
It's
piece of
interesting though.
information, though,
Yes.
really.
right, so you get a total budget, right, and then the Putney portion, you know.
Oh, the
It tells-
Putney portion of the budget. What does that even mean, Putney portion of the budget?
Of their budget.
Right,
What's the Putney portion?
How much our contribution,
right.
what our contribution is as a portion. But not all
That
of those
can't-
are in percentages, so that doesn't.
Right, because, I mean, we don't pay 100% of
Well,
Putney
this is the
community centers.
responses we got from theirs, so
Right.
they may put down 2%, or they may put down an actual number, so,
Right.
But that's just simple math to figure that out, but
But I just think there's something wrong in the way we're asking the question.
probably.
There must be, because we're certainly not, you know, our funds are not 100% of the community center's funds.
right at the moment, they're very I agree with you. They're not 100%, but they are a very I think that depends a lot on how active a board is at a given time, et cetera, so. But
Well, anyways, this is a
Yeah.
longer
Right.
conversation, and luckily we've had
Yeah.
lots of time. And I made a file.
Oh, right, a green one.
So that
Yeah.
means I will keep going.
Okay,
I'll
perfect.
keep doing research.
Public comment online, Mr. Furman?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. First, congratulations once again to Select Person Alden for yet another expert piece of policy research. Two comments, actually three. First one is, as long as you are running two systems for handling social services funding, there are probably legitimate grounds for complaint that you are treating different social services agencies differently depending on which category they're in. And I'm not a lawyer, I'm not going to give you legal advice, but I'm suggesting that this could be a question to ask yourselves.
are we doing?
The matter, during the discussion, the point was mentioned, oh, well, we're going to have a lot of articles if we have petitioned articles. I would suggest to you that if some voters petition funding for A, some for B, some for C, I wonder whether you legally could combine those into one article funding A, B, and C, because by doing so, voters are not allowed to vote for them individually, which is what they proposed in the first place. Once again, I'm not a lawyer, but I would suggest that you might want to find out about this. Now, beyond that, I support the idea of asking social service organizations, every one of them, to obtain the requisite number of signatures from Putney voters, because by doing so, they've demonstrated that they have a base of support in Putney. And those people can certainly advocate for those organizations at town meeting, and after that, it becomes the voters' decision, bearing in mind that there's two ways of making charitable donations. One is out of your own checkbook, which means you get at least a potential tax deduction, and the other is through the town, where you are obliged to pay that money, and there, penalty of a tax sale, or nor do you get any tax deduction. So there's a lot to be said for switching them all to petitioned articles, and I believe I've outlined why. But as I say, I'm simply offering this as further food for thought, not as necessarily an argument pro and con, but I guess adding a little bit to the excellent research that Select Person Alden has already completed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So just to clarify, our current social policy, agency policy, allows the select board to either accept a agency and put them on the list by vote of the select board, or require them to petition at town meeting. And we elected to require them, all new agencies this year, to go to town meeting, because we know that we are planning on revamping the social policy. So we're not treating them differently than we would other agencies. I had another point, but like Peg said, it's after 8:30, so it's gone. Does anybody have any other discussion on this? Is there any other public comment online? Okay, then I'd like to move on to, we already done what was previously under Select Board Unfinished Business, which was the appointment of Susan Coakley. So that has already been done. And then the next thing is other business, closing comments, and a brief glance at the SB Addenda on the back. Does anybody have any other business or closing comments on the Select Board? Does anybody have any other business or closing comments online? Okay, hearing.
Oh, wait, only that we can we take some of these things off? I mean, we did the appointment policy. Oh.
We haven't done the procedure.
Oh,
We changed the policy, but we haven't done the
Okay.
procedure.
Darn.
Yeah, Peg.
You've been slacking, no.
The procedure, that's not on my radar, so.
Well, apparently you
I'll
got
have to
your,
put it
I don't
on.
know, I'm not sure why your name is on it, actually. We did agree that we were going to change, we were gonna cross appointment policy off and put appointment procedure on, so, I think there was one thing on here that did disappear, and since it's gone, I don't remember what it was, so I think we have eliminated one thing from this list.
Oh,
I think it was something Peg did.
It was the
I
pol,
think
it was the
we took
policy.
something, is that what it was?
And we just changed the word. to
Yeah, but I think there was
procedure, and I
another-
didn't get the satisfaction of crossing it off the list.
We almost
Not
passed it up.
fair, not fair.
Is there any other discussion among the board? Public comment online, Mr. Fairman?
Noting that there was some difficulty in recalling exactly what happened when, it's covering what happens to people so much younger than I offer the suggestion that you might perhaps divide the list into pending and completed.
Oh, that would be
So,
nice.
you'll have a record of, these, if anyone wants to look at it, these we still have to do, these have been done. Then it'll be right there. Thank you.
Okey doke.
Okay. Thank you
Before
for
you
that.
leave.
Oh, right, we have to sign stuff too. Okay, so is there any other public comment online? Any other discussion on the board? Okay, so we are not having an executive session, right? Anybody have burning desire to have an executive session?
not me.
Okay. We are going to have a special meeting on December 7th, 2022, here at the town hall. Karen, would that be a hybrid meeting?
Yes, it can be. We do not require BCPA. It's gonna be a work session.
Okay.
We'll just use this.
Okay, so that's gonna be a special meeting, and then our next regularly scheduled date is December 14th, 2022, here and on Zoom at 5:30. So, can I hear a motion to adjourn?
Yes. I move that we adjourn.
I'll third.
Okay, it's been moved to second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you, everybody.
Sure.